Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship Season 2. And tonight marks the season finale. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it is round 12 of 12. And tonight we'll be taking a look at the Apex Racing Academy Lobby 1 as they take on the Australian circuit known only as Bathurst or the Mount Panorama circuit in full. Tonight's schedule is as follows: time speed in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or UTC. We only have one item on the agenda, and that is the feature race, the 2-hour super endurance race, which kicks off, at 8 o'clock this evening, so in just over 14 minutes' time. Tonight's broadcast, of course, will be brought to you live over 3 media platforms. Firstly, that is via the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel. That is NXTGEN Racing on YouTube.com. Alternatively, if you are Facebook inclined, you can check us out at facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. Or last but not least, if you are a Twitch user, you can always tune in via my personal Twitch channel. That is TX141 on Twitch. But who am I ask you? And indeed, you may ask me. Well, I'm your commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Brit the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I'll be bringing you all of your racing action tonight to complete what has been an absolutely fantastic season from start to finish. And indeed, this round is what it all comes down to in the end. What of the fact that this round is the one that many have been waiting for, many have been fearing, and it is a daunting prospect while drivers are going to be taking on the Mount Panorama Raceway over the course of 2 hours start to finish. But of course, this lobby and indeed this portion of our drivers group being sponsored by our title sponsor for Lobby 1, and that is Apex Racing Academy. Let's introduce them once again. So who are Apex Racing Academy, I hear you ask? Well, Apex Racing Academy is not just a setup shop. They are dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers and features not found on other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connected with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times, and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions. And in partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synchronized directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Then why not sign up now and today at apexracingac.com. That website again, apexracingac.com. And of course, we're very grateful to have Apex Racing Academy with us, our title sponsor for Lobby 1. They've been with us since Season 1 of the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship on the iRacing Sim Racing platform. Indeed, a major player within the iRacing Sim Racing coaching space. And we're very grateful to have Apex Racing Academy with us, contributing to the sizable prize pool. The prize pool being available for our championship winners in each of our classes, that being Pro, Pro-Am and Am. And on top of that, also providing prizes as part of the other awards that go to drivers following the championship's conclusion, such as the best overtaker of the season, the most improved driver and the most consistent driver, and last but not least, the driver with the best looking livery. But speaking of championships and points, meaning prizes in particular, let's go through our championship standings after 11 rounds. So as we look to our Pro Championship first, one of our 2 championships that are yet to be wrapped up in terms of the overall championship winner. Matt Caruana, after 11 rounds, leads with 357 points to Billy Fletcher's 348. These two locked in a deadlock, it would seem, in terms of being championship rivals in Season 1 and their championship rivals all the way down to the finale in Season 2, with Billy Fletcher at this point in time 9 points behind. Now, what does this mean in terms of the permutations? For Billy Fletcher to beat Matt Caruana, he will need to win this race and get the fastest lap if Matt Caruana finishes second. If Matt Caruana finishes third, then all Billy Fletcher needs to do is take the win, and that will be the decider. We're expecting both of them to be right up there over the course of the race tonight. Of course, if it's the case that Matt Caruana finishes lower than third and Billy Fletcher finishes somewhere in between first and where Matt Caruana finishes, then we'll have to dissect things even further. But that is the current state of play. Hackle Gestad in P3 on 323 points. And looking to finish off what has been a very strong campaign for the Ignium Motorsport driver, one of our sole McLaren MP4 12C drivers, and on 323 points, he's not there by chance. He has put in a colossal effort, and he'll be looking to bring that home tonight. However, will Luke McKeown have something to say about that? The very fast Logitech Altus G esports driver on 299 points, with a non-start last time out Twin Ring Motegi in the feature race. Can he come through tonight and take P3 away from Gustad at the final hurdle? Our top 5 being rounded off by Jason Landry there on 267 points and firmly finishing P5 in this championship now, barring any exceptional circumstances. But I think for Jason Landry it is the case. It has been a campaign that's going to come to its conclusion for the Delta Motorsport driver with a top 5 finish. Could he perhaps snatch P4 off of Luke McKeown? We'll have to wait and see. Kenny Herriman's P6 on 214 points, 1 point ahead of Tom Edwards, and we'll be expecting potentially one or two of these drivers to return tonight, with Mark Fletcher on 182 points in P8, and a further 10 away is Oistein Hereford in P9. Rees Cowell completes our top 10, and then outside of the top 10, here's Robert De Sinek on 160 points, 6 ahead of Deegan Fairclough, who continues to perform week in, week out after a fantastic pair of performances at what was Twin Ring Motegi, on 154 points now and looking to try and get himself as close as possible into the top 10 when all is said and done in the finale. Elliot Harper P13 at 6 points ahead of James Holman in P14. James Holman having 2 very strong performances at Twin Ring Motegi in Japan and now looking to wrap up his season on a high, with Tom Dadswell completing our top 15 and then wrapping up our championship order for the pros. It's Tom Male, Anders Vries Ankerson, Callum Brand, Daniel Blomqvist and Tony Verschaft. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class by comparison, we know that Callum Regarten, after Monza in round 10, was able to wrap up the championship in the Pro-Am category with 2 rounds to go. So as a result, whilst he has taken a points drop with the switch from the BMW M4 to Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, it is the case he is not at risk of losing that championship crown. Instead, it now looks down to Jean-Louis Deschamps in P2, the Porsche 911 driver who really has been the driver who has battled uphill through and through. On 324 points right now, he is ahead of Ben Hicks, the Ferrari driver from Ignium Motorsport, who's pursuing the Delta Motorsport driver time and time again, and with Jerry DeMova in P4 as well. Any one of those 3 could take home P2 come the end of tonight, with P2 through to P4 separated by only 25 points. Jean-Louis Deschamps is the favourite, however, we'll be looking very closely, and from catching up with Jean-Louis Deschamps, he was talking to me a little bit about his worries and concerns tonight, and we'll talk to you more about those a bit later on. Daniel Holmer in P5, meanwhile, 277 points. He's currently the best part of what is 26 points cadet of Matthew Hodges, and we're looking to try and finish P5 when the standings are complete after Bathurst, with Matthew Hodges there having a difficult day at Twin Ring Motegi after an absolutely phenomenal pole position lap in the Pro-Am class, but it wasn't to be his day despite a very strong start. Edward Lack there, P11, were a non-finish in the feature race. Currently 1 point ahead of Hackenschott in P8, with Jaco Bosch off P9 and Didi Vlaming completed our top 10 on 227 points. Just outside the top 10, 2 points down is Dirk Bouts, followed by Phil McDougall in P12, James Selects P13, and Anthony Beck and Lucas Romano complete the top 15. And then completed our Pro-Am Championship is Peter Lemkins, Paul King, Stephen Norman, Andrew Lovesey, and Colin Martin. Meanwhile, in the AM Championship, and this is perhaps where the biggest concentration attention is. As you can see here, Matthew Addy going into tonight leads by only 6 points ahead of Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen. However, there is not just between those two, with Matt Emmons and Jochen Sieg at P3, P4 respectively based on result countback, as they are tied on 332 points. This means we have 4 drivers who could potentially walk away with the AM Drivers' Championship when the checkered flag falls and all the stewards' verdicts are in. Matthew Addy is, of course, the favourite, and in terms of for Matthew Addy to win, all he needs to do is bring home the win at the end of the day, assuming that Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen finishes 1 place behind him. However, for Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen to win, he must win the race if Matthew Addy finishes second. And there will be plenty of permutations if all 4 drivers finish in a very different order from what we expect. For example, with Matt Emmons or Jochen Sieg, for them to win, as they're locked on points, one of them must take the win in the race, get the fastest lap, and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen and Matthew Addy must both have poor races and finish 6th or lower. It's going to be incredibly tight between these guys, and every moment it could all change, but that is the situation in the top 4 in the AM classification. Kurt Van Hoenacker there in P5 on 300 points. Whilst he's not a key player in the battle for the final places in the top 4, he is only 4 points ahead of his teammate Navarro de Boa from Challenge BE, and the 2 drivers will be looking to settle their differences and decide who is going to be the one to complete the top 5, with Kurt Van Hoenacker having the stronger pair of performances compared to his teammate at Twin Ring Motegi. George Bland, P7, although I have heard reports that George Bland will be demoted points because he has made a car switch going into tonight. We'll talk more about that in a bit, but he's currently going into this round P7 on 287 points, with Alexander Patak a further 27 points back in P8, Arjen Kregel P9 on 205, and Morten S. Ustus completing our top 10 in the AM classification. Outside the top 10, Stefan Tim Koopmans there in P11, followed by Gus Franken, Renaud Van Utrecht, Jurgen Nocker and Arjan Bakker to complete our top 15, and then completing our AM Championship, Peter Kupiers and Peter Dombrecht rounding off our top 17. Meanwhile, in the Constructors, or the Team Championship, if you will, you can see that going into tonight, it is Team Racing Team Astra, or RTA as they're abbreviated to, currently on 878 points. They are 15 points clear of Luxem 24 of M&V Esports, and it is the case it is going to go down to the wire for these two teams as to who is going to be our championship winner. With NXTGEN Blue in P3 and looking to seal their season on a high in P3, Switchback Motorsport P4, Apex with M&V Esports P5. Outside the top 5, Team Tetra Rouge there in a firm P6, trying to creep away from Delta Motorsport at the finish, with Challenge B2 P8, TGC Racing P9 and CXR Project Black completed our top 10. And then outside the top 10 we have NextGen Orange, Challenge B1, Alchid Esports, Ignia Motorsport and RD Simsport all in the hunt for a final top 10 finish, or at least finishing in P11 when all is said and done, with Bright Esports, Ignium Spark, Ignium Blaze, SVPMR and RD Simsport completed our top 20. And then outside our top 20, but not to be forgotten about, are Team Racing Netherlands Red ahead of RP Motorsports Rookies and then RP Motorsports Seniors, and then RP Motorsports Experts completed the trio there in P24, Team Racing Netherlands Blue and Team Racing Netherlands Orange behind, and then it's Team DDR followed by Ignium Motorsport Phoenix, and last but not least in P29, RP Motorsport Juniors. Now, as for the track tonight, we are in Bathurst, New South Wales, Australia. We've got Down Under for the completion of the series, and we are at the Mount Panorama circuit, consisting of 23 corners. This mountainous circuit is long run up to the mountain out of turn 1, and it's long run down the mountain from Forest Elbow at turn 18, running into the chase chicane at turns 21 and 22. This circuit, well, I think it's easier if we ride on board for a lap with our reference lap driver of Ben Hicks in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo to show you what it's all about. So making his way out of Murray's corner and charging across the timeline to go onto a lap here, he heads into turn 1. The left-hander here, known as Hell's Corner, and as he brakes at approximately 75 metres, coming down through the gearbox to the medium gears of second gear before now accelerated out in the long run up the hill. Charging up the straight here, known as the Mountain Straight, in the long run up towards turn 2, heading up towards Quarry Corner, you'll notice that he's going to go over a ridgeline here, full throttle, and then drop down into a dip before rising once again in the mountain ascent. Getting ready to brake into turn 2 here and rising into the right-hander, braking at approximately 80 metres and turning in hard, avoiding to go too high on the apex curve and making sure to ride the exit curve, just staying clear of the left-hand wall. And now charging up into the cutting, turns 3 and 4 here, trail braking as soon as he passes turn 3 into the very tight left-hander at turn number 4 and getting back on the throttle to complete the cutting, and now through the right-hander at 5. Into the blind chicane apex here, it turns 6 and 7 as he goes into the right left as he comes on through completely blind over the wall on the summit, and now making his way through the triple left sequence at turns 8 through to 10, culminating in turn 10 known as Montgomery Park. Balancing the throttle there through turn at number 8 and 9 before going at the lift through turn number 10 and getting back on the throttle as soon as he hits the apex, and now charging over Skyline through turn number 11. Trail braking down now through turns 12 and into 30 before turn number 14, known as the Dipper, the left-hander here, as he cuts through in first gear before stamping back on the throttle through 15 and accelerating up towards Forest Elbow through 16 into 17, getting off the throttle, trail braking into turn 18 now, bringing the car down to first gear, collecting it nice and tight to the wall before exiting, and now through left-hand kick of 19, which takes him onto the Conrod straight, or what we refer to as Conrod in short. Flat out now as he makes his way down the hill. He's had the mountain ascent and he's made his way over the mountain. Now he's got the mountainous descent, and as he comes over the rise here into the final sector, it's a long charge down and into the right hand kick. He comes into turn at 20 and making his way into the breakers over the chase chicane, braking at approximately 150 metres from the left hander at turn 21, and as he makes his way through in second gear, going now up through the gearbox once again as he comes through the right hander at 22, charging down towards the final corner, Murray's corner once again here, getting ready to brake at approximately what will be about 80 metres and coming down to second gear, making sure not to clip the apex curve because it's too high, and then exiting and finishing on the straight line. And thank you to Ben Hicks for that lap. Now, as for our rules tonight, our driver shall be running the iRacing medium downforce setup for tonight's races, or just the one race. And in general, because this is a super endurance round, there is no qualifying session or sprint race. A double point shall be awarded in the feature race, excluding the fastest lap. So that means there's double points up for grabs depending on where our driver finishes, but the fastest lap will take its standard points value. And in the feature race, the one and only race tonight, the grid will be set by reverse drivers' championship order based on the championship standings after the previous round, so round 11, and the grid will be separated into driver classes with the classes started approximately 1 second apart. Our driver's fuel loads will be restricted to 70% for the start of the race, and this is to require at least a mandatory pit stop for fuel, and there are 2 mandatory pit stops tonight where drivers will need to take on fuel and change all 4 tyres at least once, and we've highlighted that in red for you to show there's a change of rule tonight, and that is the case. Our drivers must change each tyre on the car at least once. They can do it all in one go in a single pit stop, or they can split it across the 2 pit stops, and each driver will have 3 fast repairs available given the rate of attrition at Bathurst, and the driver shall be subject to a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. Well, that's another mouthful with regards to the rules, and as we head back to our live pictures now, we are waiting to go racing, and well, we look to Matt Caruana, who's currently in the pits and itching and raring to go, and indeed our championship leader in the pro class, and really the one driver who everybody will be keeping their eyes on in the pro class for the simple reason he has led the pro class from the start of the season. He's barely relinquished that lead, if at all, and really you could argue he is the deserving championship winner come the end of it, but I think it would be the case that many would say, well, no, Billy Fletcher, who's parked right in front of him, would have something to say about that, given the fact that Billy Fletcher parked there has earned his right to be a championship contender, and the rivalry between these two has been fierce, it's been fast, it's been brilliant to watch, and both of them would be deserved winners as we are now getting ready to go racing, ladies and gentlemen. It is time as we transition over to the setting of the grid. Well, let's bring you that full grid. So starting on pole in the pro class is Tom R. Dadswell with Deegan Fairclough alongside him in P2. Mark Fletcher and Kenny Herriman's P3, P4 with Jason Landry and Hackle Gustad on the 3rd row. Billy Fletcher and Matt Caruana on row number 4 with Lucas Romano then kicking off our Pro-Am pack. He'll be ahead of James Slates there on the 5th row with Phil McDougall and DDD Verlaming on row number 6. Behind them will be Jakob Boschhoff and Edward Lack with Matthew Hodges and Daniel Homer on row number 8, Jeremy DeBova and Ben Hicks on row 9, and Jean-Louis Deschamps and Callum Reed-Garton completed our top 10 rows and completed the Pro-Am classification grid. Then we start off the AMs with Gus Franken at the head of the AM pack with Mortadest Usus behind, and then Alexander Patak and George Bland making up our 12th row, with them being followed up by what is on the 13th row then Navarro Debova and Kurt Van Hoenacker, the 2 championship rivals, Jochen Seeger and Matt Emmons on row number 14, and in our final row, Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen and Matthew Addy bringing up the rear of the field. We will have 30 drivers taking to the circuit today, and well, my goodness, it is going to be very close here at Bathurst in the one and only Super Endurance race, the second of our 2 Super Endurance races of the season. And now, as the gridding procedure is complete, all of our drivers will be itching and raring to go here as they make the way away, and it will be Tom Dadswell who takes our drivers away from the front of the field, and as you can see, it'll be the pro drivers who start off 1 second ahead of the Pro-Ams, and the Pro-Ams will be followed by their AMs with a 1 second gap as they all make their way on away. And as we do see our drivers are making their way away, it is the case that we can see in the chat there, plenty of you tuning in tonight. Katie was in the Facebook chat, enjoyed it, as we can see. We've also got there Matt Evans briefly putting a message in, but he'll be focusing on driving now. Ed Knight in the YouTube chat saying, let's go Ignium Motorsports, and Fast Chungus in the Twitch chat saying, cheering for Daniel. And indeed, I think that's referring to what is Daniel Holmer, I should say, but we're about to get underway. And it will be Tom Dadswell who takes us away come the end of the final corner. And it's lights out, away we go immediately. Dadswell going immediately out the final corner, and we are go for 2 hours of racing here at Mount Panorama as they make their way down into turn number 1. Now as our drivers come on through, we can see everybody getting a good start here with Kenny Herriman trying to take that offensive. Meanwhile, back in the Pro-Am class, it is the case that Lucas Romano holds on to lead as they all come out the exit here and go charging up the mountain, but you can see a bit further back there, all of our drivers immediately now starting to concertina together as they make their way on up. No real changes in the AM pack, as meanwhile our pros make their way up into the braking zone for turn number 2. It's Quarry Corner, and it is the case that Kenny Herriman's there falling behind the 2 championship contenders in the pro class. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see Phil McDougall going for a very, very daring move on the inside of what was James Slates, but it hasn't worked out with Slates now getting the run back as they make their way into turn number 3 here, and as they come through the left-hander, well, Phil McDougall's got it done, but that was very brave stuff in terms of going for that move, and we'll bring you a perspective back of that shortly, as meanwhile everybody now comes up through the cutting here for the first time of asking, and as we do, everybody seems to have made it safe, but Callum Reed-Garton side by side here with Daniel Homer as they make their way through 6-7. Now one of them's got to back out, and it's going to be Callum Reed-Garton who backs out. So I'm hearing that Deegan Fairclough has had a major moment. Oh goodness me, we've got a lot of smoke. There's been a huge incident. We've got multiple cars here coming into a crash over the mountain. My goodness, and it's already all kicked off as we can see everybody bringing the cars to a standstill. And I think something absolutely terrible has happened here. We've had multiple drivers involved in a huge incident. Goodness me. We'll take a look back at that very shortly as we see DDD Laming trying to recover the car. But it looks like Deegan Fairclough was right at the tip of the spear with regards to that incident. We will dissect it for you very shortly, ladies and gents. But multiple drivers involved in that incident from the start. And my goodness, as we see here, Tom Dadswell and Mark Fletcher changing places. Of course, both of them for Altitude Esports. And it's Hacker Gustad battling side by side with Jason Landry. As the caution is passed, ladies and gentlemen. We have got yellow flags here and the safety car will be out and our drivers will be required to slow the pace of the race down, and that is very unfortunate, but we did expect to have safety cars here today given the tight nature of Bathurst, and now everybody will be required to slow the racing down and essentially run to a nominated pace. As we've got a couple of drivers in the pits, we've got Lucas Aralo, James Slater, Jakob Boschoff, 3 of our Pro-Am drivers all involved in that major incident and jumping to the pits. But let's try to understand what exactly happened to set that all off, because my goodness, was that an absolute nightmare moment. We'll take a look back here at Deegan Fairclough, who, well, seems to be at the epicentre of this incident. As he's making his way through turn number 9, then coming up into 10, he lost the rear of the car there, coming through turn 9, and it was Kenny Herrimans as well, in a very similar fashion, and, well, Herrimans just simply could not get the car stopped, and that's what triggered then, I think that was James Slates who was involved in that contact, Lucas Romano was involved in that contact, and that's what set the whole sequence off, and, well, everybody then just coming over the rise and being caught in that incident. Well, that was very unfortunate for the drivers, and as we just take another look back, we look at it from Lucas Romano's perspective here. We're going to ride on board. So he was running at the head of the Pro-Am pack, and he's just going to see a load of smoke here, and well, he's trying to navigate it, and then Herriman's just in the car that's not stopped, and Lucas Romano into the wall, and then from there he's just literally got to hold on for dear life with regards to the contact with the drivers coming on through, and the yellow's not being thrown until half the pack had already come up onto the rise. And that is very unfortunate. As we return to the live pictures, we've still got those yellow flags, but appreciate a bit of a nasty incident there, and well, thank goodness it's virtual, in case nobody is harmed in the making of that incident. But what I can tell you, and a little bit of a positive one, let's take a brief moment to take a look back at that pass from Phil McDougall on the opening 2 corners, which was absolutely fantastic from the driver. If we can try and find it whilst our drivers are still behind the safety car here and now. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and we will try and bring that out for you. So here you go. Now look at this for a pass, ladies and gentlemen. Phil McDougall here wanted to get a move done early, and he's going to go all into Quarry Corner, and he clips the apex curve, but he just gets the car stopped. And to be fair to him, James Slates gave him the space to operate, and also I think was a bit cautious on the throttle here. He could have dared to believe that he could go round the outside into 3 and 4 up into the cutting, but in the end Phil McDougall deciding to go early, and well, he wanted to get a move on. Unfortunately then, of course, we had that major incident which followed, which upset the race. But right now, as we've still got the caution and our drivers are making their way on around. Now in terms of who is piloting the safety car tonight, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, I am just checking in, it is Martin Brinkworth who is driving the safety car here today. And he's making his way on around right now at the head of the safety car. And, well, it will be the case with Martin Brinkworth from NXTGEN Racing, of course, one of the administrators running in the safety car as they come all the way on down through turn number 18 through Forest Elbow here. It has been a dramatic start to proceedings here. And to be fair, we did introduce the safety car for this round because we knew if an incident was going to happen on the mountain, it could lead to huge upsets. But we do currently have Lucas Romano, James Slates and Jakob Boschoff all in the pit. And then the rest of the field has caught up here as the safety car continues to proceed its way on around at this point in time. But as our drivers make the way on through, my goodness, drama already, and we could have quite a bit more as we go over tonight. As we say hello to Paul King there in the Facebook chat, and indeed Paul King, I believe, will be cheering on the Ignium Motorsport drivers. And well, to give you an idea, Ignium Motorsport having a good start to the race with Hackle Gustad there up to P4. It is the case that he has gained 2 places at the start of this one, and it's worked out very nicely for the Ignium Motorsport driver there. And really, he has been the best of the rest in the Pro category. When we haven't been talking about Luke McKeown, alternatively Matt Caruana or Billy Fletcher, it's Hackle Gustad's name who has come out time and time again in the McLaren MP412C. And as we ride on board with him briefly here, really a really solid driver through and through, and it has shown in the fact those results have been there non-stop. And well, I think in his mind, he would love to end tonight on a high, and indeed end his season on a high as he makes way on through. I don't think the safety car's coming in, not at this point, so we're going to have one more lap behind the safety car, as we are hearing that Lucas Romano and Jakob Boschoff have both come out of the pits and done repair work to the car. We do have a number of drivers who are peeling their way into the pits. Sorry to cut away. We've got Matthew Hodges, also Daniel Holmer coming in. Callum Regarton making their way into the pits. We've got quite a few deciding to get rid of their, I would say, this is an attempt to jump in and a scheduled pit stop nice and early, whilst we do have one more lap of the safety car. Now, this is going to really change the complexion of the proceedings. Now, why do I say that? You're probably asking, well, think of it this way. The pros couldn't react to the safety car going on around and decide to come into the pits because they had to run so close behind it. But given there are 2 mandatory pit stops here, and we're expecting only 2 stops to be required tonight, or if there may be a third, this may also be a reactionary to the third pit stop, like what we saw at what was Circuit de la Sarthe or Le Mans in round number 6, where that third stop or that 2 stop, there was the strategic difference in the end, which made up a lot of races and destroyed a lot of races. We can see it is the case right now. Our pros, well, they've got to commit to staying on out. Meanwhile, Phil McDougall has decided not to flinch to come into the pits, and this means he is now the leader of the Prime class in P7 with Jean-Louis Deschamps behind him. And look how far up the field Jean-Louis Deschamps has come in the open lap. To be fair, obviously it's been aided by adverse circumstances and the safety car, but Jean-Louis Deschamps has gambled to stay out here to take track position, and the same with Jeremy Debova. And remember that Jeremy Debova has an outside chance of taking P2 in the Prime classification come the end of the championship if it is the case that Jean-Louis Deschamps and also Ben Hicks drop it. But meanwhile, speaking of Ben Hicks, well, it is the case the Ignite Motorsport Blaze driver has decided to gamble here. He's decided to come in to get rid of his first pit stop, and I would presume it's most likely the case that the drivers here have perhaps gone to take some extra fuel in the car, perhaps also done an initial tyre swap, although we'll have to wait to see whether that's the case, where they decide to go for fresh rubber, and they would argue they're getting a free pit stop, I should say. But albeit it's going to be one of those situations, I think, whereby by taking this pit stop they will find themselves at the back of the pack. We'll have to wait and see. But talking about Ben Hicks, when I caught up with Jean-Louis Deschamps, we see him briefly disconnect and then reappear. That's just a little bit of a latency issue there, as is traditional on iRacing, the sim racing platform that we are using for the purposes of this series. When I was catching up with Jean-Louis Deschamps, he was saying that this was the man who scared him the most going into tonight. Whilst he was aware that Jeremy Debova could potentially steal the P2, the run-up spot in the Prime Championship away, Jean-Louis Deschamps has been focusing very heavily on Ben Hicks for the simple reason he's much closer, 17-point difference, and it is the case if Jean-Louis Deschamps finishes just a couple of places behind Ben Hicks, it would be the situation where Jean-Louis Deschamps loses that P2 when all is said and done, and that was really heavily on his mind as we see Ben Hicks making his way on around. Now, one other thing I'd like to report, and I was saying about George Bland switching his car earlier, and I think he was getting a bit frustrated in the Porsche 911 and has been gradually getting more and more frustrated with the German machinery. He has gone back to the British machinery as the Englishman from M&B Esports, and that is he's gone back to his favourite, the McLaren MP412C. Of course, the car which, whilst it didn't win the didn't win the AM Championship in Season 1, unfortunately losing out in the final round due to a very difficult day at the races for George Bland. It is the case he's gone back to the car that netted him the best livery of Season 1, and indeed we do know that George Bland is a huge fan of the McLaren MP412C. So whilst he's not really in championship contention anymore, taking that points deduction for the car swap, it is the case that he's gone to a car he absolutely loves for the season finale, which he is permitted to do so, of course, and I think he's going to be enjoying this, and perhaps he's also thinking about the season ahead, Season 3, but we'll talk more about that at the end of tonight's programme. There is going to be a Season 3, but the details still to be decided. But meanwhile, as we look down at the order, we can see that our AM pack in particular has really made their way into the midfield now. Now, this is where the complexion changes, and well, it is the case. We've got all of our AMs together bar one, and that's Matt Emmons, who right now is speeding his way to catch up to the pack, and the safety car is going to be in this lap from what I'm hearing. I've had confirmation, so the safety car is going to peel away. Now, has Matt Emmons gambled this one too much? He's decided to come on in, most likely for a scheduled stop, but it'll be Mark Fletcher, the Altitude Esports driver here, returning to the series, who is going to get us underway as we see the safety car there. It peels its way on in the end, and in a rather aggressive fashion, and now we wait for the Briton to get us underway once more. And here we go once again, ladies and gentlemen. We're going green again as we make our way across the timing line, and we have completed 10 minutes of the race. Still another 110 to go as Mark Fletcher makes his way down into turn number one. And that's going to be a bit more of a line of stern fare here, with the fact everybody was in single file, and that'll be about everybody trying to keep it together as Callum Regarton is into the pits. Now, I'm wondering if Callum Regarton's made a bit of a mistake or something's wrong with the car, but we're not going to worry about that too much right now, because Delta Motorsports' Jason Landry in P3 battling side by side here with Hakon Gustave is going to drag race his way on past class. I think Jason Landry deciding that caution's the better part of valor as he makes his way through quarry corner. And as they do, you can see Billy Fletcher close behind right now. The Luxem 24 of MV Esports driver running the Altitude Esports livery. That's not by mistake. It is the case that he is changing a livery and team come the future seasons of race. He's not fully associated with Luxem 24 after this, and as a result, he is running a different livery. And it's the same for Matt Caruana. If you're wondering why he's running a different livery, he's now racing for the GTWR R8G Academy, which I believe is the Romain Grosjean Academy team, as he makes his way up through turn number 8 and into 9 as they come rolling on through. And hopefully this time we won't see anything major happen into the corners. We're hearing that Matthew Hodges has had a major moment, but meanwhile Matt Caruana all over the back here of Billy Fletcher as they come down into Skyline and looking very fierce as they come on through into the dip, but he's not quite able to go for it. Meanwhile Phil McDougall just tucked in behind all of the pros right now, and the Brown driver getting a very nice start to this race in terms of the restart as he makes his way down into Forest Elbow. And as they come through turn number 18 and make their way onto the straight, this will be the first major opportunity for an overtake, as we see behind Jean-Louis Deschamps locking up the brakes very briefly there. A camera shot, a bit of smoke coming on up, and as they make their way down the straight right now, we look back up here to the pro drivers as they make their way into the chase chicane, and it does look as though Billy Fletcher looking for a potential move here, and Jason Landry, will he dare or will he wait as they come down to the braking zone? He's going to look up the inside, and Jason Landry, they're not offering a hard defense. He's decided just to let it go and run the pace in the race as they come on through. Billy Fletcher up to P4, and he'll be hoping that Jason Landry can cost Matt Caruana a little bit of time. As you can see, Landry goes defensive. Now this is a little bit odd to be fair, but I think what it is, perhaps it is the case that Landry feels as though by going defensive there, he doesn't lose too much time as he would have battling into the chase. But normally as they make the way on through, I thought Landry would have been going for a little bit of fuel saving there, but perhaps now he'll be doing it as they come around through turn number 1. So after that lap, it is the case that all of our drivers make the way on through, onto another lap here, onto effectively what is the 5th lap of this race, albeit it is only our 3rd lap under race conditions. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see that Phil McDougall here leading the Pro-Am class with Jean-Louis Deschamps quite the way behind, 2 seconds behind almost. And then a bit further back in the AM category, it's Gus Franken who's currently leading, as I think that we've got a little bit of a concertina effect occurring in what is the AM class here. Stefan Gamble Rasmussen is making his way towards the head of it, and meanwhile we can see Matthew Addy there tucking in behind Dean Fairclough, who is trying to recover his way up the order as they make their way in towards Quarry Corner as they exit. Dean Fairclough having the mammoth job to do of cutting his way all the way up through the field. The pro driver who was of course involved and was one of the first drivers to be involved in that instant on lap number 1, which brought out the safety car. But as they make the way on through this time, we can see a little bit further back there, you can see struggling for a little bit of pace right now. It's the Next Gen Racing Orange driver as they make the way through the cutting up through 5 into 6, 7. I think there's some damage on the German's car here. It does look as though the front left side over the wheel, the aero has been pushed in, and the bodywork is quite heavily crumpled, and that is damaging his aerodynamic effects as he makes his way through the corners here. But the BMW M4 driver is carrying on all the same, and I think he does not want to lose the hump with the impact, because if he comes into the bits, he may feel as though that is his championship chances completely dashed as he makes his way on through. But as he comes on through, remember we do have quite a few drivers out of position right now, and as we look further back here, here's Edward Lack, who's currently P6 in the Pro-Am class, who as he makes his way brewing down to Forest Elbow, he's chasing after DDD Belaming and trying to gain an opportunity as Dean Fairclough gains another position on Alexander Batak. But we look from them to Matt Caruana, and Matt Caruana comes on through up the inside here, Jason Landry going down into the chase. And I think what Landry was doing there, the reason why he went a little bit defensive into what was the final corner, I think what he wanted to do was essentially get the message through to Matt Caruana. Look, I'm going to be letting you through eventually, but just don't try and force it through because we're going to be losing time. And to be fair, Caruana has lost some time to Billy Fletcher up in front over the mountain, I would say, looking at our sector timing screens here. I think Landry's trying to drive in the best way possible for him, which is to do some fuel saving over the mountain and then tuck in behind the faster drivers when they come down the chase, because that's the best place to let somebody through if they are faster than you. You could do it also up the mountain straight here, but remember, when you're driving uphill, every moment you lift off the throttle, it is going to cost you more because you're driving uphill, and therefore you want the RPM in the car to be a lot higher, or the revs to be higher as they make their way up into turn number 2. Now as they come on through here this time, we look a little bit further down the order and we can see it. Meanwhile in P13, P4 in the AM class, we've got George Bland here, who having fallen down a couple of places is making his way on through right now, chasing after what is there Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, as meanwhile Matthew Addy here has made the pass on what was, I believe that's Alexander Batat, and also Daniel Holmer, the Pro-Am driver, coming on through. And it is the case now, Bright Esports' driver of Daniel Holmer from Sweden find his way through it as Matt Emmons, I think, has had a moment. Oh goodness me, and I think Matt Emmons into the wall there at Quarry Corner. What has happened? Now, do keep in mind that Matt Emmons was running right towards the back, having gambled on that pit stop. Now, as he's coming to quarry corner into turn 2, he's gone a little bit wide of apex, trying to turn the car through, and it's just simply over-rotated into the wall, and it's a tap to the wall, and he's reversed it out the way. But Matt Emmons there, it's not a good start to his night, but we've still got plenty of time to go. We're only 16 minutes in, but right now he is the last of our drivers, and he is P10 in the AM class. As we look from him up towards the front, and it is the case of Tom Dadswell right now, feeling some pressure from Hakon Gustad, as we can see the Altitude Esports driver in the Audi R8 making his way all the way down, using the performance of that V10 naturally aspirated 5.2 litre engine as they make their way down. But you can see the McLaren driver there, Hakon Gustad, going inside to outside, coming down into the chase here. He's going to try and go all the way round, but Dadswell's going to stay side by side. There's a little bit of door to door, but they give one another just enough space, although I would say there's a bit too much contact there. And as they make their way down in towards Murray's corner, it's going to be Billy Fletcher who capitalises here as they come on through, and Fletcher looks at the cutback here. Gustad does not want to lose the position he's just gained. He goes defensive immediately up towards turn 1 into Hell's corner. Whose Hell's it going to be as they make the way? And you can see Matt Caruana squeeze into the inside, and there's contact there with what was Dadswell, and Dadswell is turned, and now Phil McDougall comes on through, as does Jason Landry, and I think Jason Landry involved in contact there with what was Tom Dadswell. They move out the way and try to get themselves back up to speed. I'm not sure if there's going to be a safety car for that, because it's not a blockage to the circuit, and they were quite a way ahead of the rest of the pursuing pack as Jason Landry has had to jump to the pit. What exactly happened there? Let's take a look. Well, as they made their way into the corner, we're going to be seeing it from, firstly, Dadswell's perspective as they made their way out. And Dadswell here, well, I think Matt Caruana was a bit too bold on that move. And then as Dadswell tried to get the car back together, Landry was coming through and was just connected by Dadswell trying to get the car back up to speed. And I think that explains the story there. But I think it is the case that right now there might be a question over the initial move from Matt Caruana there. And that's not what he could afford to do, because it's cost him time. It's also cost him parts of the car in terms of some aero, I would say, on the front right-hand side, on the front right-hand side of the bumper. And now he has also, of course, got the cloud over his head with regards to will he be receiving a potential penalty from the stewards come the post-race. And that is not what you want when you are the championship leader, because right now what that does is, as we look to his championship rival here, Billy Fletcher, the Briton, it is going to give his rival an absolute opportunity here to capitalise even more. And I think it was just a little bit of a hot-headed move in the moment. No malice meant, but it was the case, a bit of a jump too soon. As we look back to the live action now, and with 18 minutes complete, we can see Billy Fletcher ahead of Hakon Gustad running in the slipstream of the Audi driver as they make the way down through 20 into the chase chicane. You're going to see Gustad's going to try and come back here. And Fletcher, well, he's going to stay side by side. The two of them give one another room here. And I think Fletcher might just be a little bit wary of what happened between Gustad and also Dadswell on the previous lap at the same corner, where they were literally in the same configuration. And as they made their way through Murray's corner, where it's Billy Fletcher who loses the place and tucks back in behind. But I think he'll be coming back very shortly as he takes a little peek there into turn 1, but he decides not to go for it. As we look from them to a bit further down the order, what I can tell you in the meantime is that Edward Lack here in pursuit of Navarro de Bova. And as they make the way down into Murray's corner here, battling with the AM driver as the prime, he's going to look up the inside, and Navarro de Bova, to be fair, gives him all the space in the world, goes a little bit deep because he knows it's not going to cost him too much time, and lets the prime through. He'll probably be doing the same for Ben Hicks shortly, as meanwhile, a bit further back there, we can see Alexander Batak here running the EMP 20 and running quite slowly as he comes up into turn 1, and he's got all the pro-ams trying to squeeze the way on through. He lets them through just about there. That was very brave, as we're hearing that Jason Landry still in the pits, and George Bland coming into the pit lane with damage to the car. He's had an off somewhere, and we can see that Alexander Patak now side by side here battling with Jochen Seeger, and of course Jochen Seeger in that championship hunt. Alexander Patak not, but he'll be working with his teammate from the Switchback Motorsports, Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, who is, and he will not want to let the NXTGEN Racing orange driver through if he can help it, as they make their way through 2 and up into 3, and he's held on to it for the time being, but that was very near the nail as they make the way on up into the cutting for what for them now is the 8th time of asking as they come through, and 20 minutes complete. But as they come through right now, we look a little bit further up the order, and what I can tell you is that Ben Hicks here, as we ride on board with the Ferrari driver, and my goodness, it's a roller coaster ride in race conditions. I mean, when one car's out on the circuit by itself, it's fantastic, but now as they come through with Kurt Van Nijenhuizen ahead, who the AM driver going a bit slower compared to the primes, and I think just not as comfortable over the mountain, perhaps feeling a bit of worry from the primes behind him as they come down into the cut, into the dipper, I should say, and you can definitely tell Van Nijenhuizen not carrying as much speed as Edward Lack and Ben Hicks, but they have to respect the fact that the AM drives are technically slower by nature because that's the class they're in, and so they will be potentially slower through certain sections of the circuit. But I think in Ed Black's case right now, he's absolutely frothing and foaming at the mouth. He wants to get on through, and you can see there Van Hernacker pulling over to the side, and Ben Hicks looking to try and follow him through here. But it's a case that with the two cars in front, both powered by the same Audi engine, well, Ben Hicks comes through in the end. As we look to the exterior picture, you can see that Van Hernacker lifting off at the right time there to let them through and not lose any time, because he does not want Matthew Addy to come through, as Matthew Addy looks up the inside here of Navarro de Bova. He can't quite get it done, and that would have been a critical pass for Matthew Addy. He needs to close down Gamborg Rasmussen, who's a lot further up the order right now. Matthew Addy has not had the gains that Gamborg Rasmussen has had on the opening laps as they make their way through final corner and go on to another lap here. And my goodness, Matthew Addy, well, he's got a lot to do to hunt down Gamborg Rasmussen. If things finish as they are, it would be Gamborg Rasmussen who would be your AM champion, and he will not like that any one bit as they make the way on through. And well, we can see there in the YouTube chat, Katie Eames was talking about the safety car driver, and Ed Knight in the YouTube chat in particular saying that, well, oh dear, and I think that was in response to the incident involving Matt Caruana earlier on, and also Tom Dadswell. But indeed, it'll be oh dear for Matthew Addy if he cannot find a way to get further up the order, because it will be an opportunity lost, and well lost at that. But as they make the way on through, you can see Addy going for the move again out of two, as I think it was the case that DeBova a little bit slow. He's going to dare to go around the outside, and he clips the wall there as he goes through three, and Matthew Addy can't afford to do that, because if he does it wrong and keeps hitting the wall, or even just hits it once more, it could be the case that could be critical suspension damage, and he'll be into the pits. And I think right now he is going quite slowly. I think he's already feeling the after effects of that clipping of the wall there. It was bold, but it wasn't going to work, particularly when the car's on high fuel, and it's almost as if you've got a massive pendulum in the back of the car in that Ferrari, in terms with all the fuel in plus the engine at the rear. It's just simply not going to want to turn, and Matthew Addy is closing up once again here, but I think impatience got the better of him. Well, as a wait and see as Kurt Van Hernacker loses the rear over the mountain. He's got to keep it in the wall, and in doing so he will avoid anybody coming on through. Now, does he have an opportunity to move it out of the way? He does, but what happened to Kurt Van Hernacker? Well, we're right on board here with Van Hernacker as he came on down through Skyline into the dipper he goes, and I think it's going to be the case he just attacks the apex too hard. Yep, he loses the rear, and well, right behind him of course was Navarro de Bova, who tapped the rear of him and put him into the wall. But to be fair, Kurt Van Hernacker had already lost the car, and I think Navarro de Bova in the end just had nowhere to go. He couldn't have known it went that way, but Kurt Van Hernacker making a mistake there, and that has cost him quite dearly over the mountain. As meanwhile we look back up towards our leaders, and what I can tell you, and we should really give you a quick roll call of the order after what is the opening 9 laps now to lap number 10. It is Mark Fletcher leading this race ahead of Hakan Rashad in P2. And I'm sorry to interrupt this, ladies and gentlemen, because Matthew Addy has just made, well, I'm not sure if he's just simply missed his braking zone at the final corner or there's been some other belligerent involved, but it is the case that Matthew Addy has now dropped all the way down to P26, that's P7 in the AM class, and what was a difficult start to the race has only been compounded and made worse. What exactly happened? Let's find out. So as he was making his way out of the chicane and making his way into Murray's corner, he was side by side with Navarro de Bova, and a tiny bit of contact between the two of them there. Now that looks to be netcode contact, and what we mean by that is where the cars, well, they're side by side and not quote unquote visually in contact with one another, but it was the case that based on internet connectivity it looked as though there was more severe contact than meets the eye there, and Matthew Addy just sent off the circuit, and that's going to be a very difficult one. I think Matthew Addy right now will not be happy, and I think Navarro de Bova would argue, well, I didn't even feel him there next to me in terms of I don't feel as though there was any contact, but that is not what Matthew Addy would have wanted. But to be fair, it's just a spin-off. It is not further damage to the car. There may be a little bit of flat spotting on the tyres, but it will soldier, and we know Matthew Addy can dig very deep, the SVPMR driver. That's why he is the AM Championship leader going into tonight, because he has dug extremely deep to get into that lead position, but now he will have everything asked of him. If it wasn't the case already, he will literally have every scrap of performance he has asked of him to now recover this race. But to be fair, it is the case that 3 of our 4 AM class drivers have had difficult races. It's the case that Matt Emmons has already got it wrong, Matthew Addy has got it wrong, Jochen Seeger has got it wrong. The only one who hasn't befallen anything so far, and it's all looking green at the moment, and I'm not trying to put the commentator's curse to it, I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, it's Switchback Motorsport Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen running P2 in the AM class right now, and it is the case that the Dane is on course, if things finished as they were, to take the championship win in the AM class. And I think right now he will be thinking about the advantage he's got and how he can make it work, but we will wait and see. There is plenty of mileage to go. It is not all said and done as they make the way on around, but what I can tell you in terms of mileage and places to go. We can see Mark Fletcher here, our race leader. And let's give you a roll call of that order now. We're on the 11th lap. So it is Mark Fletcher leading by a margin of 5 seconds ahead of Hackenristad in P2. And he is being pursued right now by his fellow pro drivers of Billy Fletcher and Matt Caruana, who are both hunting him down. And he is proving to be very difficult to overtake. It's then Phil McDougall in P5, our Pro-Am leader, who is gradually being reeled in. Well, I say he's gradually being reeled in. Actually, he's reeling away from Jean-Louis Deschamps in P2 in the Pro-Am class, P6 overall, with Jeremy Debova P7 here, making his way up through turn 7 currently, with Tom Dadswell behind, who is in P8. Tom Dadswell, the pro driver, involved in that incident earlier on between himself and Matt Caruana at turn 1. Gus Franken is our AM class leader, P9 overall at the moment, 3.4 seconds clear of Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, who is making his way up into turn number 9 as we currently speak, and as he comes on through, he is right now our main contender for the AM Championship, were things to finish as they currently stand. Daniel Holmer P11, the Bright Esports driver here. He is P4 in the Pro-Am class, with Edward Lapp behind in P5. In the Pro-Am class, P12 with Deegan Fairclough closing up, with Deegan Fairclough having been in the wars early on in this race, and you can tell that by the mangled rear wing of the Audi R8. It's Ben Hicks meanwhile in P14, the Pro-Am driver, P6 in class, with Morten Estusuz in P3 in the AM class, losing the rear end there very slightly, coming through the dip, and he's P15 overall. We then got Didi Blaming, P16, ahead of Kenny Harriman's P17. We then got Navarro Debova, P18, then Jaco Boschov, P19, and Matthew Hodges completes our top 20 as they all make their way down into Forest Selvo. It's then P21, Lucas Romano, being pursued by Jochen Seeger, the AM driver here, Alexander Batak just behind him, and then we've got James Slate, P24, with Matthew Addy, P25, Matt Emmons, P26, and then we've got Callum Reed-Garton, well, I was going to say Callum Reed-Garton, Kurt Van Hoenacker, in fact, as I think Callum Reed-Garton has been involved in a huge moment. I'm not sure what's happened here to Callum Reed-Garton. Let's take a look back. Well, he's P28. He wasn't when we were not looking at him, as he made his way down into the dipper here. I think it's going to be a classic. The rear end slides out through the dipper. It does indeed. And it comes completely loose, and he has to get the car out of the way. And, well, that is a horrible place to lose the car. But he kept it out of the way of everybody. Credit to him for letting everybody on through before trying to rectify the car. But that does mean Callum Reed-Garton is now down to P29 with George Bland, P28, the AM driver switching into the McLaren for this season finale. And it is Jason Landry, who is a lap down. Well, I believe he's a lap down. Yep, he's a lap down now on our leader. Mark Fletcher is just up the road from him. And Jason Landry, of course, being involved in a major incident earlier on. Well, now he's trying to bring things back together as he makes his way down through the dipper here, a lap down on our leader. But meanwhile, as we look back up towards our leader, Mark Fletcher here, keeping it nice and smooth so far. Not really putting a foot wrong, to be fair, Mark Fletcher right now. He's got a long way to go, but it has been a very solid race. But really the big challenge as we ride on board the gearbox here of Hackenristad is who's going to be able to find a way past the devilishly tricky Norwegian as he makes his way down Conrod and heads up towards the chase here. And to be fair, Billy Fletcher and Matt Caruana will both not be shy and will be fully aware of just the racing capabilities of the McLaren driver as they make the way down towards the chicane. They come through the right hander here and now make the way into the heavy braking zone, and as they come down from over 160 mile an hour all the way down to approximately 60 miles an hour, you can see it is the case as they build up that speed. It just continues to press on, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, I do apologise, we have to cut away. I think there has been some sort of incident up on the mountain involving Tom Dadswell and perhaps Deegan Fairclough. Let's take a look. Well, this was Tom Dadswell only a moment ago, and as he made his way down out Skyline into the dipper here, is it going to be another driver who's caught by the dipper? It is indeed, and the car, oh goodness me, now that is not a nice place for the car to spin, and he's reversed the car and he's just stopped it, and everybody coming roaring on through here. And for Dadswell, well, it was one of those situations where when he's been able to get the car out of the way, and then well, he's just had to keep parking, and then it's Deegan Fairclough who's come on in and just gone straight in and onto his roof there. And well, that explains why Deegan Fairclough has gone into the pits as well as we return to the live pictures. Both drivers into the pits. That's very unfortunate for their races, but they both effectively cleared the obstruction as a result, and therefore no safety car was called as far as I'm aware. I'm not seeing anything with regards to a safety car being announced, so we carry on racing. That's very unfortunate for the two drivers. And Ed Lack into the pits, and I think for Ed Lack this is a scheduled stop, as meanwhile we can see here it's Lucas Romano who's battling with Kenny Harriman's behind him. I think Kenny Harriman's the pro driver will very quickly find his way on through in the run up towards the quarry corner here, assuming that Lucas Romano does not battle with the pro driver. Of course, they're in different classes, but meanwhile we can see Navarro over here letting Matthew Hodges on through, as it is the case the AM driver has got drivers of all different classes coming through on his side. As they make the way, the AM driver not wanting to hold them up and not lose his own race time as they make the way through quarry. Now, as they come through the right-hander and up towards turns 3 and 4, we can see it is the case as they make the way. And we do have some more pit stops going. Kurt Van Hohenacker also into the pits. Ed Lack, as we said earlier, into the pits. Tom Dadswat and Deegan Fairclough jump into the pits. They're effectively a lap down. We've also had our first retirement of the race, I do believe, and that was Jaco Boschop, the Ignium Motorsport driver from South Africa, unfortunately retiring and his season not ending on a high. As we say hello to Retouch Academy there in the Twitch chat, who's cheering on Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, who, to give you an update, is in P9 overall, P2 in the AM class right now, chasing down Gus Franken and hunting him down at a very rapid rate of knots here as they make their way down to Conrad. And to give you a comparator, that last lap, Gamborg Rasmussen was almost the best part of a whole second faster compared to Gus Franken. It was 9/10 in fact, but almost a second as they make the way down towards the chase chicane. But he is pushing all the same, and it's good to see you, Retouch Academy, join us in. I think that's the first time we've seen you in chat, and if my memory's not correct, do let me know. But as they make their way on through right now, indeed intensifying at the front of the Anfield, as meanwhile we look back to, and we were talking earlier about the battle between our drivers in the Pro class, and we can see here Matt Caruana trying to come on from the inside into Quarry. He's gone all the way and he's got it done there. We didn't quite see it from the start, but Billy Fletcher has also found his way through. You can see Fletcher at the front of your camera as they make the way into the cutting here, but Hakan Gustad has lost 2 places. Was it for the price of 1? Let's take a look back and answer the question. Right, so this was the build-up, and this was Billy Fletcher finding his way on through. Now, Fletcher was very close to the back of Hakan Gustad in the run down at Conrad on the previous lap, and he just simply got it done up the inside into the chase. And Gustad not fighting that one too hard. I think realising it was time to focus more on simply tucking in behind the faster drivers and running in a fuel-saving mode or just running to their pace. But meanwhile, what about Matt Caruana? Was a drag race coming out of the turn 1. You can see Jason Landry there having to back off the Delta Motorsport driver, who's a lap down to be involved, and that's when we saw Matt Caruana sweep his way through up the inside into turn number 2 as we look back to live pictures. But meanwhile, as they make their way through, we're hearing that Morten Esustus is into the pits. He's had an instant and jumped to the pits, in fact, so it may be the case that he is looking to do some repair work on the car. But after the opening half an hour, things have now calmed down a little bit in terms of major incidents, or at least major incidents that we've seen. We are seeing a couple of incidents here and there, but nothing as big anymore. And of course, that's a good thing. We don't want major incidents at the end of the day. Of course, they create a lot of drama. And speaking of drama, well, Matt Caruana there was within a 10th of a second of Billy Fletcher, but no sparks between these two right now as they make the way on around. And do remember that all Matt Caruana needs to do, based on where the championship is currently, is he needs to finish second and take the fastest lap of this race. If Billy Fletcher wins but doesn't get the fastest lap and Matt Caruana finishes P2, then it will be Matt Caruana who still takes the championship. Billy Fletcher needs to score that fastest lap to nail it and get the championship in the bag as they make the way on through. And in terms of who owns the fastest lap at this point in time, well, I do believe that is Matt Caruana at this point. It is a 2:03.5 to Matt Caruana as he makes his way on up. But to be fair, Callum Reed-Garton almost matching that fastest lap, albeit Callum Reed-Garton, the pro and driver, down in P22, P10 in class. As meanwhile, we look a bit further down the road and we can see here a little bit of a negotiation going on, it looks as though, as they make the way down. To be fair, a negotiation at 160 plus mile an hour here down Conrad, and we can see it's the case. I think Navarro de Bova is struggling with something on the car. That Audi does not look to be a very happy machine and seems to be struggling for pace. But Alexander Batat has found his way on through and got himself up into P3 in the AM class here. That is P16 overall, and Navarro de Bova seems to be caught in amongst what is Alexander Batak and also Jochen Seeger, who's just behind. Now, to be fair and something we haven't talked about too much, Jochen Seeger is actually now really recovering this race and doing a fantastic job of getting himself back up there. Remember, he has an outside chance of winning the AM Championship, and when he really relies on Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen and Matthew Addy both having disaster races. But right now, Gamborg Rasmussen is further up the road. You can see Matthew Addy there behind Jochen Seeger, 1 place behind. And as they make the way, there's Matt Emmons as well. So they are all coming together, all the championship contenders once again, minus the driver who's right at the head of that championship contention, Gamborg Rasmussen, all the way up in P9. But it is the case the other 3 rivals are starting to get closer and closer to one another on circuit, and it'll be interesting to see how they navigate around one another, whether they're going to be polite or they're all going to go in all action all the way through as they make their way up into the cutting. But right now you can see that putting this race back together, it was in pieces, but he seems to be recovering it as they make the way on down. But as they head and around up into turn 6 and 7, and we look a little bit further back here to Matt Emmons, who right now down in P20, that is P7 in the AM class, is just chasing down Matthew Addy here and doing everything he can in the BMW M4 to give that pursuit and try and find a way to recover from what has been a difficult start. as he makes his way through. He was talking to me before the race to Britain, and he was saying he was very nervous for this. But to be fair, when he's oh goodness, we've had a major incident. Is that Matthew Addy involved in? Well, Matthew Addy's definitely been involved. There's a car coming over there, and well, I think Addy's just trying to get the car out the way. Something has gone horrifically wrong, and that's involved both Alexander Patak and Matthew Addy. Alexander Patak has jumped to the pits, and Matthew Addy with a crippled steering lock. You can see that the car's just not going the way he wants. It's going at an angle, and I think Addy's going to jump into the pits. He has jumped to the pits, Matthew Addy. What exactly happened? So they're making their way through. So Alexander Patak was a little bit wrong there, and he went into McPhillamy at way too tight an apex angle, and Navarro de Bova, my goodness, Navarro did everything he could to avoid that contact, and Matthew Addy, in the end, we came over completely blind Matthew Addy. We're going to take a look back at that from Matthew Addy's perspective, ladies and gentlemen, but my goodness, that was a rough moment. We're right on board. Now remember, Matthew Addy's coming through McPhillamy right now, and he can see ahead of him Yokonsiga, and he can see something's kicking off. He slows the car down, but in the end, well, it's the case that he goes into the back of Yokonsiga, gives him a tap, and then we just careens into what was Alexander Patak there, and he tries to recover the car, but the steering lock's completely broken, and he has to jump to the pits, and that... well, it is the case that Matthew Addy now doing the repair work, and Alexander Patak as well. I don't think any of them could have predicted that's the way it was going to go. But meanwhile, speaking of going to what is another straight and a run down towards the chase, we can see it is Matt Caruana giving that pursuit of Billy Fletcher once more as they make the way on down here. And as they do, I think at this point, now the question really does beckon, with these two drivers being quite equal in pace, is Matt Caruana just going to do fuel saving for quite a sizable bit of time here and trying to jump Billy Fletcher in terms of strategy? Why I say that, I think Matt Caruana here wants to get the pass done on circuit and then run off into the distance. He is showing a lot of pace, to be fair, Caruana, but Billy Fletcher is no slouch either as he keeps hold of that P2 position for the time being, and they both make the way down into the final corner. Now, in terms of when can we expect drivers to pit, we've seen Navarro de Bova come into pits. He's just left the pits and dropped all the way down to P22, and that is to repair damage on the car through the contact with Alexander Patak. We did everything he could to avoid it, but in the end there was no way of avoiding that contact. And as they make their way through, we are expecting, in an ideal world where you balance the race based on the time available, you'd expect drivers to make their first scheduled stop 40 minutes in and their second scheduled stop approximately 80 minutes in. We have normally seen a tendency from our drivers to try and run that opening stint for as long as possible, normally somewhere in the region of 45 to 50 minutes, but we stopped talking about that for now because Billy Fletcher has to go defensive briefly versus Matt Caruana, who's trying to get Billy Fletcher to overcommit to a defence line there to lose some pace going through Quarry Corner, but Billy Fletcher very wise and savvy to it. Of course, these two know one another like a book as they make their way up into the cutting, and as they come on through, both of them will now be trying to gain the upper hand, playing the mind games here, and you've got Hackenstein just tucked in behind watching, and I think the Ignium Motorsport driver is probably thinking to himself, just keep it up, lads, just keep it up, knock one another about, make mistakes, and I'll gain the place off of both of you. I think the Norwegian is just playing the smart game here, and Ignium Motorsport will be watching with bated breath right now the opportunity potentially for them to see a P2 come the end of proceedings, if not the win, if they're able to reel in Mark Fletcher. But whilst this is all going on, I can tell you that a bit further down the order as they make the way on through, it is the case that Gus Franken is still being reeled in here by Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, but it's not as rapidly as we previously thought. It is the case the RP Motorsport senior driver here from the Netherlands doing a fantastic job in just running his race. He started at the front of the Anfield, to be fair, but it's not just about starting at the front, you have to take it to the finish, and right now he is showing why he's able to take it to the distance as he's currently 39 minutes into this race and running a very solid performance. But we have to cut away from that, ladies and gentlemen, because here we look back to the battle for P2, the battle between our championship rivals in the Pro Class, and you can see Matt Caruana all over the back of Billy Fletcher once again. He's not going for it. He will go for it at some point, surely he'll want to, but right now both of them are just simply running in formation. But I think it's Caruana who's deciding when it's going to change as they make the way on through, and as they come charge on down, we can see I've just had confirmation with regards to the instance earlier on that there would be no safety car with regards to those instants that we saw coming through the dipper, and that was just provided to me by Martin Brinkworth as they make the way down into turn number 1. And meanwhile, a little bit further down the order as they come out of Hell's Corner and go up the mountain straight once again, we do look to Daniel Holmer, who's just found his way past Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen. But to be fair, I think it's just as much the AM driver yielding the position to the Pram as it is the Pram being faster and wanting to come on through, because at the end of the day neither of them want to hold one another up, which is completely understandable. And I think now what Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen will be hoping is that Holmer gets alongside what is Gus Franken and takes some lap time out of Gus Franken, and therefore brings the two AM drivers closer together, and that makes Rasmussen's time a little bit easier in terms of he doesn't have to push as hard to close down that gap as they make their way onto lap number 18. Now, as they come through a bit further down the order, I can tell you that Cameron Garton making his way past James Slate, who has been in the wars. And yes, that is a Ferrari 488 you're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, that is pursuing the Lamborghini now. It looks a bit crumpled, but I can assure you, once it was an Italian stallion, and now it's quite heavily damaged. But I think James Slate's trying to make the most of that car. As meanwhile, it is the case we've had a change of position between Matt Emmons and Jochen Seeger here. Matt Emmons up into P3 in the AM class versus Jochen Seeger, who's dropped position. That was the battle for P15 overall. And how did it happen? Well, it was the run down Conrad and into the chase here, and Jochen Seeger not battling this one too hard, to be fair, but it looks as though, in fact, Jochen Seeger outbroke himself there when he aimed to go outside to inside defensive, and Matt Emmons just simply said, okay, if you're going to give me extra space, I'll just happily take it. And the Briton up another position as a result, as we look back to live pictures, and I can tell you that Cameron Garton has just made his way past Matt Emmons, but to be fair, the Pro-Am champion coming through the order very rapidly indeed and wanting to hunt down his Pro-Am peers. As we look from them now back to what is the run all the way over the mountain to our driver in P8, and that is Gus Franken here. You can see he's definitely being reeled in by Daniel Holman. Gamble Rasmussen is just staying there within arm's reach, and I think the Switchback Motorsport driver is really going to town on fuel saving, because we saw him with a lot of pace as we're hearing that Morten Estustus has jumped to the pits once again, but we saw Rasmussen earlier running a huge amount of pace as he makes his way down onto Conrad here, and Holman's going to go for the move, and this will be, I think, a simple straight line pass here. He'll be assuming, I think, that Franken is going to lift off at some point, what with the BMW now being slightly wounded on the straights by comparison with the Ferrari, although both cars have a rather lazy sixth gear as they make their way down. But you can see there is the case that Holmer is let on through by Franken into turn 20 and then breaking into 21. It is the case that the driver swapped positions and confirmed that, but right now Holmer going pursuing after Jeremy DeBova, who is 8.2 seconds up the road as they make the way charging on down in towards turn 23. Now, for those you guys and girls who are tuning in right now, question for you: who are you cheering on? Assuming that you are cheering on a particular driver, and when are you expecting all the pit stops to occur? Remember, we've got 2 mandatory stops as a minimum tonight in terms of when pit stops, and I personally predict that we are going to be expecting those pit stops to start occurring within the next 10 minutes, if not sooner, particularly for our drivers who've yet to come into the pits at all. But do let me know your predictions, and also, as I say, who you're rooting for and what your predictions for this race are going to be in terms of who you think is going to win it, as they all make their way on down and around. As we look here from what is the battle, or the battle for P8, I say, but really it's the case that P8 is going to wander off into the distance, as we see Neil Andrews there in YouTube chat cheering on CXR. And well, in terms of CXR drivers here, we do have our CXR Project Black driver of Phil McDougall, who is leading the Pro-Am class right now. He started towards the front, albeit he was towards the front, but in the mid-pack of the Pro-Am grid, and he capitalised on the chaos at the start of the race, and also by not pitting, whereas the majority of the Pro-Am drivers did make that pit stop. And we see Phil McDougall there actually getting a bit of an awkward line coming into Forrest's elbow. He was very tight to the inside. Well, he avoided the wall, to be fair, but that's going to cost him a lot of time. And well, indeed, then Neil Andrews saying that Phil McDougall to win in the Pro-Am class. Well, right now it's looking good, but we do have to be wary of the fact that he's made one less pit stop than those guys who did jump to the pits during the safety car window, and whether that means that he's effectively a pit stop out of order, we will wait and find out as we see McDougall making his way on through. And I'm sorry to announce, ladies and gentlemen, we have added another retirement to this race. We've lost Jakob Boschoff, we lost him quite early on, and we've also lost Deegan Fairclough. So we have lost 2 drivers out of our 30 starters. We've lost 1 pro and 1 Pro-Am, but we've still got 28 strong, as Morten Estustus and Alexander Patak are both into the pits, having repair work done to the car currently, as we see McDougall go on to another lap. But where are the rest of the CXR Project Black lot, I hear you ask? Well, we can see here Matthew Hodges, who I think had a little bit of a chaotic start. He was involved in a bit of contact earlier on. You can see the mangled front bumper of that Ferrari. It's almost as if it's got a grin on the front, but I can assure you that is not an artist's interpretation of a grin. That is where he's got a lot of scratches to the paintwork on the front bumper as he makes his way up behind Indy Devalame here. And we do know that Matthew Hodges is a very fast driver, a very strong driver as well, and well, he has shown it time and time again, but he's just never had any luck, Hodges, in terms of being able to bring home a win, whether it was at Spa, whether it was in a Twin Ring Motegi. It's never quite worked out. As here we go, these are the first stops. They are coming in. Stefan Gamble Rasmussen is into the pits from the P2 in the AM class. Didi Devalame comes in from what was P6 in the Pro-Am class here, and as he makes his way in, I think that may be the trigger being pulled for a whole wave of pit stops, and we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, in the battle for what is P3 in the AM class, I can tell you that right now you can see it tucking in behind here. Matt Emmons, both of them in the BMW M4, and both of them going another lap. And as they come breaking on down into turn 23, we can see it there in the YouTube chat. Martin Brinkworth saying, I'm rooting for a safe and quiet race for the next hour and a bit, wanting there not to be the need to deploy another safety car. And of course, Martin Brinkworth, our safety car driver, who you can say hello to in the YouTube chat if you're watching via YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure Martin wouldn't mind a little word of nicety in his ear, because he does put a lot of effort in being our safety car driver for this series and other series. As we can see here, you can see her backing off a little bit versus what is Matt Emmons there, and just building himself back up to speed now, as he also did give some space there. But when he didn't give space, he just simply run the car in the middle of the road. But where has Gamble Rasmussen come out in all of this, I hear you ask? He has come out behind what is Matthew Addy, who is a lap down as they make the way on through the corner. And as they come on through now, and it's going to be one of situations where as they come through into the cutting, Matthew Addy at this point, I think, will be seeing it all go to tears in terms of he is a lap off of the driver who right now will be taking the AM Championship win away from him when the checkered flag falls, if it finishes as it currently is, as they make the way on around. But he will not want that to happen, of course, as they come on through and in towards McPhillamy. As they come through McPhillamy Park, we've got more pit stops going. I can see James Slates outside my commentary box window, and also Tom Dadswell into the pits. Navarro de Bova is also into the pits. I think they're doing quite a bit of repair work to the car. I'm hearing a few swear words coming up from the McChange B garage, I think, where they're trying to hammer some panels back into place. But meanwhile, looking a bit further up the order, I can tell you that it is the case that Billy Fletcher still holds on to P2 here. And in terms of his disadvantage to Mark Fletcher, who's 5.4 seconds up the road, it is the case that Billy Fletcher right now is lapping approximately half a second a lap faster than Mark Fletcher. And before anybody asks, no, they are not brothers. They have the same surname, but they are not related in terms of family. And as we see here, Billy Fletcher holding on right now. Matt Caruana constantly there and very intimidating. I think Caruana is in a fuel-saving mode here because he has shown time and time again how close he can get. To be fair, both of them will be pushing 100%, but I do think that Caruana does have the ace up the sleeve with regards to having the ability to just save a bit of fuel. Remember, both cars, the Audi ARA and also Lamborghini Huracan, both powered by the same Audi V10 5.2 litre naturally aspirated engine. So they are equal machinery in terms of engine power. It comes down to the aerodynamics on the car and those predetermined medium setups. As we see here, Matt Caruana right behind. He pulls out a little bit here, but I think he's also given a little bit of a push to Billy Fletcher as they make the way down into the chase chicane. And as they come on through, I'm hearing that Alexander Pataka's had an off and has had to jump to the pit, and Navarro de Bova is just exiting the pit as Mark Fletcher is the first of our leading pro drivers to come into the pits for a scheduled stop. And Mark Fletcher coming on in, and also Hakon Gustad. But what about Billy Fletcher and also Matt Caruana? I can see as George Bland loses the rear of the car on the exit at the final corner. Now as they make the way down towards turn number 1 this time, they come roaring on through, and as they do, we can see Billy Fletcher takes the lead of this race with Matt Caruana behind him. Now is this a power play from Hakon Gustad to go for the undercut versus these two? And when I say a power play, in terms will it give him track position, and he can really go to town of making this race a nightmare for anybody behind him, which is his right to do so, as long as he's not driving menacingly or anything along those lines to break shooting rules. As we can see, Phil McDougall into the pits as well, the Pro-Am driver here coming on in from the lead of the Pro-Am class, and Jeremy de Bova and Jean-Louis Deschamps both in. And to be fair, these two, what is the case, well, as they make the way on in, I think there was even a pass only moments ago. Was they making their way on? I think Jean-Louis Deschamps has had an off. In fact, yes, he had an off coming out of the chicane, and Jeremy de Bova made the pass there. I mean, that was very daring, and it was across the white solid line now. I think there might be a question about that one, or at least if there's an FIA rule set, there might be a question about crossing the white solid pit entry line. I think we're not as strict on it here, but Jeremy de Bova has gained the place. They're capitalising, and well, as they now have their pit stop, it's going to be about who comes out soonest, as meanwhile Matthew Hodges stays out. To be fair, Matthew Hodges has already made one pit stop. We have to keep that in mind. He made a stop earlier on under the safety car, the opening safety car, the first of them, and as he makes his way on up right now, we can see it as he goes charging up the mountain straight. Well, Jean-Louis Deschamps has already left his pit box. Jeremy de Bova has yet to leave his pit box, so it is going to be Jean-Louis Deschamps who comes out ahead of Jeremy de Bova, but there could also be that tyre change element, of course. Remember, our drivers must change all 4 tyres, so on each point of the car, they must change the tyre there at least once. They don't have to do it all at once. They can do, say, the fronts in one pit stop and the rears in another pit stop, but they must change all 4 at least once over the race distance, and tyre wear is going to be a major factor here at Bathurst. We just know how aggressive this circuit is. as they make the way on around right now. And indeed, a good point there from Paul King in the Facebook chat, something we haven't talked about. EDM Motorsport is blazes Ben Hicks. He's already made one stop, and he is currently P2 in the Pro-Am class here, and he's only 3.3 seconds off of Daniel Holmer, the Pro-Am class leader, who's also pitted. Ben Hicks, well, if the strategy in terms of utilising that safety car window has worked to his advantage, this could be critical. But speaking of critical, here they come on in, ladies and gents. We were waiting for this. Billy Fletcher and Matt Caruana both come in. They're literally nose to tail. They're both there nose to tail in their pit boxes, and now it's going to be about who is the quicker in the pit stops. Meanwhile, where is Mark Fletcher? Where's Hakan Gustad? Well, Mark Fletcher making his way out of the chase chicane. He was our race leader by 5 seconds ahead of Fletcher and Caruana before he pitted. Will he still be leading when he comes on around to go on to lap number 23? He comes through the final corner, and as he does, well, we'll have to wait and see as he makes his way across that timing line, flashing the lights there in order to tell what is the AM driver ahead of him to move out the way. And Mark Fletcher is going to retake the lead, but Matt Caruana leaves his pit box first. He goes through, but we can see Billy Fletcher is up on the jacks there. So Billy Fletcher's deciding to go for the tyre change early. They're doing work on the car, and I think this is going to spell the difference. But look who's jumped Matt Caruana. It's Hakan Gustad who has jumped Caruana. Now this is not what Caruana would have wanted to see. Now why do I say that, ladies and gentlemen? For the simple reason, if you want to talk about a rivalry and battling which literally is full elbows out, it's Caruana versus Gustad. These two from the start of season 2 have been there with one another, and every time they are sharing the same portion of track and they're battling, there's always been sparks. And Caruana will now know he needs to get past Gustad as quickly as possible, because meanwhile Billy Fletcher, who has gone for that tyre change, he is now out in P7. That is P5 in class. But the most important thing for him, as you can see on the time screens there, he is 12.5 seconds down on P6 man Kenny Harriman. Oh no! And Billy Fletcher's lost it! He's lost the rear of the car into quarry, and what was looking to be a superb piece of strategy is now a jump to the pits, and Fletcher has lost it. Oh my goodness! And in just one moment, we take a look back and we ride on board. But as he made his way out to the braking zone, I think here it's just the rear locked, and as he went into the corner, the rear just bounced out on him, and Billy Fletcher, my goodness, and that is a disaster for the Briton, who has retired. He has retired from the race, and Will Fletcher is out of this one, which effectively will mean that, well, Matt Caruana now, so long as he brings the car home and doesn't do anything on the way to deserve a points deduction, Caruana is going to be your Pro Championship winner, because that is a retirement for Billy Fletcher as I understand it, and that, well, it's not the way we wanted it to go. Now Matt Caruana has just got to get it home, because if he doesn't, well then what I can tell you right now, if he doesn't bring it home based on the double points, it'll be this man, Hakan Gustad, who takes the championship win in the Pro class. And I think right now he may be thinking to himself, okay, that's one of them gone. Oh, goodness me, as we see there, Alexander Batak and Kurt Van Hoenack having a bit of an argy-bargy coming out of turn 1, and you can see that Gustad flashing his lights there, trying to tell them both to get a move on as they make the way on up towards turn number 2. And we can see it is going to be the case, as my apologies for jumping to the wrong car there. We can see Kurt Van Hoenack backing off, but he's not able to back off enough. I think there was a little tap there from what was Hakan Gustad as they come on through, and as they make the way through the right-hander and now go charging up into what is turn 3 and 4. Into the cutting. Well, Kurt Van Hoenack here simply now in a very uncomfortable position, because he wants to battle with what is Batak ahead of him, but Batak, to be fair, is a lap down, so there's no need to battle. He just needs to let the pros through. It's very difficult over the mountain. You can't fault him, as we see that Caruana literally on the full offensive there, coming through turns 6 and 7, almost hitting the wall as Daniel Holmer is into the pit, as is Ben Hicks and Callum Reed-Garton. The pit window is still kicking off here for that first set of scheduled stops. And my goodness, this is proven to be an ever more unpredictable race. And I think Matt Caruana now is just literally trying to get right there into the vapour trails of Hakan Gustad to go for the move, as Gustad's going to dare to look for a move into Forest Elbow versus what is there, Alexander Batak. I mean, that is brave. Even for a car that's a lap down, that is incredibly brave to try and get past a car that's a lap down over the mountain. But he's done it almost as they come out Forest Elbow. And now Caruana is going to be all over the back of the McLaren driver as they make their way down Conrod. My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, the last 5 minutes have been explosive, but it's not over yet as they make the way on down, and Caruana's going to look to the inside to outside here as they come through 20 and into the braking zone for the chase. And you can see Gustad just simply backs off there, and I think Gustad knows he's not as fast as Caruana, and in the end, if the two of them battled, all he'll eventually do is take apart his own race, because he will overwork the tyres, he'll overwork the brakes, and instead he will cost himself the opportunity to undercut. And I think what Gustad is doing, he's going to tuck in, he's going to fuel save, and he's going to manage that race and use the fuel saving to get the advantage on Caruana at the second round of pit stops, as he locks up under braking there into turn number 1. And was there contact between the two of them? I don't think there was. It almost looked like there was contact, but Gustad just a bit too close. I think he might have just cost himself that opportunity to run right behind the Lamborghini driver as they make the way up the mountain straight. But whilst all this has been happening, I should tell you that meanwhile our leader now in the Pro-Am class is Jean-Louis Deschamps. Now Jean-Louis Deschamps has already made one pit stop. We do know that. I believe it was a pit stop right towards the start under safety car conditions, and he's soldiering on out there. And the Delta Motorsport driver right now, well, he is the best part of 7 seconds clear of Daniel Holmer, who is P2, P5 overall, but P2 in the Pro-Am class. And Jean-Louis Deschamps, if things were to finish as they were, he would be your Pro-Am runner-up, because remember, that is what's on the line tonight with Callum Garton sealing the Pro-Am Championship at round 10 at Monza. It is now all about coming second, being that run-up, and Jean-Louis Deschamps, the Porsche driver here, the one driver to take the Porsche in this pack, well, he's doing a fantastic job here and battling against the elements, as we can see there in the YouTube chat. And we say hello to Felipe Uchin, who's saying Caruana is looking promising. Indeed, he is. And, well, will he have won by default is the question. Yes, that is correct. So long as Caruana brings this car home in a manner where it is classified to have finished the race and therefore pick up points, he will win the Pro Championship by default. The only exception would be if he was to retire from this one and not be classified as finishing the race. He would receive a DNF and get 0 points. Then you would need this man, Hakan Gustad, to win the race. If he won and Matt Caruana did not finish and receive any points, then it would be Hakan Gustad who would take the championship win, and that would, it's an outside chance, but it can happen, to be fair. We have seen crazier in other sim racing leagues, and indeed in real world motorsport. Anything can happen in the season finale, and that's why it's the tensest race of the season when the championship's on the line. Indeed, many of you will know about all the drama and the chaos that happened in the Formula 1 at 2021 at championship finale. Of course, we're not going to talk about that controversy there in terms of what was right, was wrong, but that's just to give you an example. There's plenty more examples, and indeed right now I think that's what Gustad will be holding on in there for. He will be hoping that Caruana cannot make it to the end, because if so, he will by default have that opportunity, so long as he can hunt down Mark Fletcher, of taking the Pro Championship. But we will wait and see as he makes his way on around. As they come charging on up, we can see that meanwhile Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen making his way around, and indeed that is a point. And Martin Brinkworth saying there in the YouTube chat about Billy Fletcher, who has retired. He was not going into this race feeling 100%. Well, it's something I didn't talk about earlier on. I do apologise for that. So Billy Fletcher soldiering against the elements, but in the end it is the case that he's had to retire due to a combination of a huge mistake into turn 2, and also I think his health not on the best side. As we can see here, Phil McDougall right now having a bit of a situation whereby he's got, well, what was there? I think that was Navarro Debova coming through, and Phil McDougall jumping to the pits here. And McDougall for his second, his first stop here as he makes his way on in. Well, he's already made one stop. My apologies. No, this is his second stop. But Phil McDougall deciding to come on in. Now, I think this is a bit of strategy here. I think what he's deciding to do is come in. Let's see if he goes up on the jacks, because he makes his way in as we're hearing that George Bland has come into trouble out on the circuit. But as Phil McDougall makes his way in, we'll come back to him very shortly, as he's going to just soldier down towards his pit box. But when he does, we will see if he's up on the jacks. So we see Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen currently leading the AM class here, and in a world of his own, with Gus Frankenham dropped some way down the order. And Phil McDougall has made a quick stop. It was a very quick stop, so he wasn't up on the jacks. We'll have to wait and see, but I think Phil McDougall, if that is his second and final stop of the day, unless he's picked up an excess number of penalties, but well, that's not where it would have been a drive-through penalty rather than what would have been a stop-and-go penalty. Drive-throughs for 25 more instant points. Phil McDougall right now would be done the strategy, and he's in P6 in the Pro-Am class currently, but I think he could have an opportunity to take the win. We'll wait and see. But as he makes his way on around right now, we look a little bit further back to another 6R Project Black driver, and that is Matthew Hodges here, battling with DD Belay, making goes defensive in the run up the mountain straight here, and as they come over the crest and now down and into the rise up into Quarry Corner, Matthew Hodges is going to try and go all the way round, but he's going to have an Audi on his inside. But in the end, DD Belay cannot keep on the inside there for too long, and as they make their way through the right-hander of turn 2, it is the case Matthew Hodges gains another place here, and DD Belay looks at the comeback into cutting, but he's not able to find it as they make their way through turns 3 and 4. Now we see there in the Twitch chat Billy Fletcher Racing saying that he's done, and well, it's very unfortunate, Billy. And, well, I was just saying moments ago, something we didn't talk about earlier on in the broadcast due to the rapid rate in which we came into the racing is that you weren't feeling it too well going into the racing tonight. But very unfortunate incident there. But to be fair, even if it does mean that you come home at P2 in the Pro Championship, when all is said and done, a fantastic effort from yourself. And I think everybody viewing will not take anything from you in the fact that you gave it your all from start to finish. And we do miss seeing you out on circuit, but at the same time, it was brilliant to see you racing out there whilst you were racing very close with Matt Caruana. But as we go from talking in the chat there to now looking back to the racing here on our screens right now, what I can tell you is that Phil McDougall here, well, he is up behind with Jason Landry, and I believe as he makes his way in, Jason Landry, in fact, recovering this race, to be fair. Jason Landry, having made that very early pit stop and being a lap down with all the pit stops that are now occurring, he's actually made his way up into P4 in the Pro class here, and, well, the Delta Motorsport driver doing everything he can to come back into the proceedings as he makes his way on round, and as they come on through and across that time, once again, an hour is complete. Let's give you a run through of the field after an hour of racing and a little bit of the backstory. So your race leader currently, after an hour, is Mark Fletcher, the overall leader and your pro class leader. He started towards the front. He swapped places with Tom Dadswell early on, and the Alshire Esports driver since then has just tried to run off into the distance. I think he really wants to make this super endurance race his win and his to own as he comes across the timeline to go on to lap number 28. He has made one pit stop, and he has really been faultless so far. He hasn't been involved in any drama, incidents, or anything at that time. He's just put lap after lap in, and it's been strong. Behind him in P2, 9 seconds behind, is Matt Caruana, who, as referred to in the YouTube chat by Conan as being a bit of a beast. Then we say hello to you, Conan, in the YouTube chat. Great to have you with us. It is the case that Caruana right now was in a very close contest with Billy Fletcher, but with the pit stops, it was the case that Caruana went for the short fuel stop versus Billy Fletcher, who went for the tyre stop. And Caruana is up into P2. He's recently found his way back past Hakon Gustad, and, well, the two of them right now are running as you see them on screen. And Matt Caruana is our Pro Championship leader, and if things were to finish as they are now, he will comfortably finish as our Pro Championship winner. P3, Hakon Gustad, meanwhile, the Norwegian driver here, the Ignium Motorsport driver, putting in another classic Gustad drive as he makes his way up into the cutting here. In the fact that whilst he's not quite there on the pace of the outright leaders, he's just behind them and staying with them, and indeed showing what he can do as he makes his way through 6 and 7. Then in P4, and the leader of the Pro class, we have Jean-Louis Deschamps here, who, having made one pit stop quite early on, we do believe the Delta Motorsport driver here is out of sync compared to some of the pit stops with his peers in the class. But as he makes his way on up and charging on through, it is the case that Jean-Louis Deschamps doing everything right so far as he makes his way over the crest and down and up into turn number 2. But right now, the Delta Motorsport driver looking good to seal P2 in the Pro Championship. And Daniel Holmer is just behind, 4.2 seconds behind in P5. Now, these drivers, of course, will have benefited or essentially based their strategies on the safety car that was triggered on the opening lap due to a major incident coming into McPhillamy Park, where we saw a number of drivers, including Deegan Fairclough, who has retired from this race, to name one of many drivers. And Deegan Fairclough was one of the drivers at the epicentre of the incident. I'm not saying he caused it, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, just that's the name that comes to mind because he was the first car to lose the rear end. Kenny Hermans was also another driver involved in that major incident. But we can see Daniel Holmer here in P5 and enjoying perhaps his best race of the season so far. Stefan Gamble Rasmussen in P6. He is our AM Class winner, as AM Class leader, I should say, and would be our AM Class Championship winner. Getting ahead of myself there as he makes his way through McPhillamy Park. If the Dane was to finish where he is currently, and right now he is in a world of his own, very far clear of the rest of the AM Class as he makes his way down into what is the Dipper, with Edward Lack behind in P7, the Pro-Am driver, currently third in the Pro-Am class and gaining through strategy. He's made one stop, and Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, meanwhile, has only made he's already made 2 stops as Gamble Rasmussen, I do believe. No, he's made the 1 stop as well, but Daniel Holmer has made 2 stops further up the pack. We've got Ben Hicks in P8 meanwhile, and then we've got Jason Landry in P9. And Jason Landry really has been a story of this race so far. P4 in the Pro class. He has benefited, of course, from the retirements of other Pro drivers. We lost Billy Fletcher, Tom Dadswell and Deegan Fairclough, but it is also the case that he was a lap down after what was 15 minutes of racing, and now he is back on the lead lap and racing strong and true as he makes his way out of Forest Elbow. We then have Phil McDougall rounding off our top 10 here overall, with Jeremy DeBova only 1.3 seconds behind. These two battling, but we do believe, looking back to Phil McDougall, we do believe the CXR Project Black driver here is on a very different strategy compared to his peers. He decided not to pit under the safety car and instead run it long, and it has given him a great track position. He's made 2 pit stops already. We do believe it could be the case that he is now running to the end, and if so, he is potentially the de facto driver to retake the lead of the Pro class and take it to the finish. Jeremy DeBova just behind, of course, P4 in the Pro Championship with that outside chance of snatching P2 off of Jean-Louis Deschamps, but he's got a long way to go, and he's made 1 stop, and he's in P6 in the class, P11 overall. Kenny Herron's continuing that recovery drive as Jason Landry has just come into the pits, as I see outside my commentary box window. So Kenny Herron's will be promoted to P11 as he makes his way on through here, and the RP Motorsports Experts driver just trying to keep things together after what was a very difficult start. Matt Emmons is P2 in the AM class right now, P13. A long way off of the AM class leader, Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, as he makes his way through turn 1. But the Luxem 24 MV Esports driver here doing everything he needs to right now to end his championship campaign on a high, even if it's not the championship win overall. As he does have behind him there Matthew Hodges in P13 as they make the way on up. And it'll be the case that Matthew Hodges will be coming up the inside very shortly into Quarry, and they'll swap places. Didi Vlaming, meanwhile, the Pro-Am driver here, he does have behind him, that is Callum Reed-Garton coming on through, and Vlaming lifting off there as he drops down to P15 with Callum Reed-Garton coming on through, and both drivers having very difficult races and being involved in knocks and scrapes of their own, and indeed with other drivers. Gus Franken is P3 in the AM class right now, P16, and as he makes his way through the RP Motorsport Seniors drive, he started on pole in the AM class. He decided not to pit when the safety car came out, and he's just been running a solid race, and to be fair, whilst he's not on the pace of Matt Emmons or Terty Gamble Rasmussen, he is putting in a very solid drive right now, and you can't take anything from the Dutchman as he makes his way on around. Kurt van Hoenacker, meanwhile, in P17, the M-Class driver here, and he is just ahead of Jochen Seeger, who's a bit further back in the pitch there, and Alexander Patak, who's in P26. It's between the two of them a lap down. Jochen Seeger here, who's had a very difficult start to the race and trying to recover right now. He's currently P18, P5 in the M-Class. We then have Lucas Romano, P19, as he makes his way over the crest and up into Quarry, with Jason Landry coming out the pits now in P20. And I think he's going to the end now after that stint, and he's going to try and recover as many places as possible. And then we have James States P21, who's just had an off at the final corner. The RP Motorsports rookie driver not having a day to remember here at Bathurst as he makes his way on through. And I do believe we have got a bit of an incident happening further up the road involving Jeremy DeBova. We'll talk more about that shortly. We then got George Bland P at 22 here in a difficult day of racing. He's behind Navarro DeBova, who is a lap down, who's in P25, and he'll be coming on for under blue flags very shortly. We then have Morten Oosthuus P23, and then we've got Matthew Addy P24, and Matthew Addy really has seen, he is our AM Championship leader going into tonight. This race has not gone his way at all, and right now it is all slipping away from him with less than an hour to go. Navarro DeBova P25, as we said a moment ago, Alexander Patak P26, and the last of our drivers running right now. We've had the 4 retirements: Billy Fletcher, Tom Dadswell, Deegan Fairclough, and Jaco Boschoff. But with that, that covers the field and really the story so far. As we see Def's Hourglass there in the YouTube chat saying he has damage. The car was crabbing, and I believe that is in reference, unless I'm very much mistaken, Def's Hourglass to Billy Fletcher, I would presume, as they make their way on around, but feel free to clarify that. But that has been the case in terms of how the racing has gone. But we are going to take a quick look back at what happened to Jeremy DeBova. Now, this was in the run down Conrod here, and you're going to see Jeremy DeBova on the right-hand side of your picture, and Matt Emmons tucks in behind Matthew Hodges, and they both come through together there, and I think Jeremy DeBova has got significant damage to the car because he's losing a lot of straight-line speed. I think as well as aero damage on Jeremy DeBova's car, there may also be some steering rack damage, and he's actually coming into the pits. So I would say, with Jeremy DeBova coming into the pitch, yep, they're doing repair work to the car, plus it's up on the jacks, and as he leaves now, they've done the repair work. And remember, our drivers have got 3 fast repairs here due to the high rate of attrition with regards to damage. And we can see Def's Hourglass there saying the 6R car that pitted, whose name has left me. So I think that's Phil McDougall, I would presume, because he's the one we saw pit earlier on. And I think that's when you dropped us the message. And again, ladies and gentlemen, yep, the Beamer, and there he is, Phil McDougall. So we've got that in spot on in the end. And thank you, Def's Hourglass, for clarifying. But to those of you tuning in, by the way, feel free to point out things we're not spotting. We can't catch it all, of course. If you do see something that you'd like us to draw the attention to, feel free to do so. But in the meantime, we will carry on as we see Phil McDougall carry on his way out to turn 22 and down to turn 23. But as he makes his way around right now, we do see Callum Regarton here. He's tucked in behind Matt Emmons and the two drivers, of course, in two different classes. You see Callum Regarton coming on through. He goes around, of course, the pair of them teammates with Luxim24 of MV Esports, and they'll be both wanting to get the best possible points finishes because they are battling with Team Race and Team Astra, who are in the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing Lobby, so Lobby 2, which we'll be taking a look at tomorrow night. But it's racing right now. They are in that battle for the Team Championship overall win. And, of course, these two drivers will need to make up for the fact that their third driver, Billy Fletcher, has retired from this race, unfortunately, as we saw earlier and we discussed earlier, as they make the way on around. As our drivers make their way on through at this point in time, we do look a little bit further up the order, and what I can tell you is that as they come on through, it is Hakan Ristad tucked in behind Matt Caruana once again as they exit out of turn number 1. Now, as they make the way out of the corner and go charging up here, you can see Matt Caruana pulling to the left very early on. Now, in doing so here, he's offering Hakan Ristad space up the inside, but I think Ristad knows not to go for it. And I think they've agreed a sort of mutual respect here at this point, which is both of them, in a way, agreeing not to battle one another because they're running their current strategy. And to be fair, this is working for them in terms of they are matching Mark Fletcher with regards to lap time, but we will, of course, wait and see what happens when Mark Fletcher comes out of it. Indeed, all three drivers in our top 3 have got to pit still, as now Ristad makes his way over the mountain just behind Caruana, and we're going to stay on board as he makes his way over the mountain here, because it just gives you a sense of perspective of just how hard he is running behind Caruana and how close he's staying to the championship leader as they make the way into McPhillamy. Now, of course, Ristad has to lift off through a good number of these corners because of the loss of aerodynamic downforce running in the dirt. He had the Lamborghini in front of him and he won't want to clip the car in front. Alternatively, just simply lose his own car as they make their way through the dipper and now coming into Forest Hill. But they've got a bit of traffic ahead of them. That's Gus Franken, who, remember, he is a lap down, but of course he's required to get out of the way in a sensible fashion. He can't just immediately move the car out of the way or phase it out of existence. And as they make their way down to Conrad, this is where he'll most likely move out the way. But Ristad, they're staying with Caruana as they make the long run down Conrad now. And as they do, both drivers pressing on and hunting down Mark Fletcher as best as they possibly can. As we are hearing that Navarro de Bova has jumped to the pits. Something has gone very wrong for Navarro de Bova. He's had an off on circuit, and now he is down in P26, last of our running positions, as we look from the battle for P2 to what is the battle for P19, and that is, well, P18 I should say, and that's Jason Landry right now, the pro driver pursuing Lucas Romano, the pro-am driver, who's just ahead of him. The two Ferraris making their way on through, and as they come on down and through into Forest Elbow, you see Landry taking a little peek into Forest Elbow there, but not fully committing, nowhere near enough to be able to go for the move. He's not alongside there, although it is possible to overtake into Forest Elbow, but you've got to be a lot more alongside than that, and the driver who you're battling with has to respect the fact you are there as they make the way on down Conrad. As they come on down, only moments ago as well, there was a pass between Jochen Seeger and Kurt van Hoornacker, and let's take a look back at how that played out. And this was, of course, 4th position in the AM class, and well, Van Hoornacker stayed on what was the outside to inside into the chase, but he went onto the grass briefly and had to come off the throttle there, and you can see able to get a very pleasant and easy pass. Well, I think it was the case that he was expecting Van Hoornacker to potentially be on his inside into turn 21. Then we are Jason Landry. We just cut away briefly. He found his way past Lucas Romano in the run down towards the chase there. The two of them swapping places and not battling for position in class, only battling for overall position as they make their way down into turn 21. But as they come on through, we look a little bit further up the road meanwhile, and Callum Regarton now pursuing Matthew Hodges. Now at this point, of course, much like what we saw at Le Mans, we are in a little bit of a quiet phase right now in terms of we're not expecting too many battles on circuit. We're waiting to see how those final pit stops play out and how the field then gets rearranged as a result. And remember, a good number of drivers have already made 2 stops. We are wondering, and those are particularly drivers who have made a stop under the safety car, the opening lap safety car, and then a scheduled stop at the midpoint of the race. We're wondering whether we're going to be seeing those drivers make a 3rd stop, as I'm hearing that Edward Lack is into the pits on what is P7 overall, P3 in class, but we continue to watch here. Callum Regarton chasing after Matthew Hodges, not able to find his way on through at this point in time, but inching ever closer versus the Ferrari driver as the 2 Italian machines now make their way down towards turn 23. Now as they come up in towards Murray's corner here, well, Regarton, of course, he hasn't got anything to prove in terms of he's already won the Pro-Am Championship. He just wants to go out there to get the best possible result for his team now, and that's why he's pursuing these positions as much as humanly possible. And as he makes his way on through, Edward Lackey in the pit still, and they're just putting fuel in the car. It's not up on the jacks here, so they're putting the fuel in, but we look back to Callum Regarton here, who gives that pursuit for what is now effectively P5 in class. But remember that these two have made 2 stops already. We do have that question of whether they'll be making a 3rd. as Edward Lack now leaves his pit box, and he's going to be coming out, I believe, P15 overall, P8 in the Prime class, and he will have Gus Franken just ahead of him, who's just come across the timing line as they make their way on around. Now, as they do, meanwhile, we do look a little bit further up the order once again, and we look to what is Ben Hicks here, currently running in P3 in the Prime class. Oh, goodness me, and we see there James Slate's getting it wrong, and oh, goodness me, and oh, that is Ben Hicks connected there by James Slate, and Hicks involved in an incident which has completely scuppered his race after what was a very solid run. And the Ignium Motorsport Blaze driver now, I think that is going to be a huge heartbreak in the Ignium Motorsport garage, because that contact has damaged the car and he's now got to limp it to the pits, and it is a long painful way all the way back. He's got to come down Forest Elbow and then down Conrad, but that is not the way he wanted it to go. And let's take a look back at what happened. So right on board here with what was James Slate's initially. So how did it go wrong for him? Well, he just simply lost the car. In fact, he just understeered wide there, and as he tried to bring the car back together, he goes into the wall, and then he will receive the contact from what was Ben Hicks, and he's jumped to the pits as, well, in fact, yeah, he's jumped to the pits as James Slates, as we return to Ben Hicks, who's trying to bring the car home. He does not want to go a lap down by jumping to the pits and then having that extended repair time in the pits, the tow time, if you will, to simulate what is essentially the car being towed to the pits as he makes his way down Conrad here. But this is horrible in terms of how long he's got to go as he makes his way on down, but he's staying out of the way of everybody, and in the end he has parked it up. He is going to jump to the pits, I think, and well, Ben Hicks now, I think, ruining what could have been, because this means that if things were to finish as they are, as Ben Hicks has been towed to the pits, assuming Jean-Louis Deschamps does not make any cataclysmic mistakes, he will be your runner-up in the Pro-Am class as he makes his way down Skyline and into the dipper here. And surely he must be looking at the timing screens right now, and Delta Motorsport must be getting on the radio to say to him, look, Jean-Louis, you've just got to bring the car home now. Jeremy DeBova is all the way down in P9. Ben Hicks has dropped all the way down to P10 with damage to the car. You do not need to do anything magical now. You've just got to bring it home, and I think it'll be the case that the Belgian, and we know he is a very smart racer, I think he will just try to bring it home all the way to the finish as he does. And meanwhile, we look further down the order once again. It's the case that Matthew Hodges, meanwhile, the last of our drivers in the overall top 10, chased after Callum Regarton. Callum Regarton having, of course, found his way past Matthew Hodges, and as they make the way in towards McPhillamy, coming up into turn number 10 right now, as we see Hodges lifting off there, and that is to let Mark Fletcher through. And well, that was a very interesting way of doing it. Very sudden there. I would have thought they would have done it coming all the way down out of Forest Elbow and on towards Conrad, but I think Matthew Hodges decided he wanted it out of the way as soon as possible. Completely understandable, mind you. He doesn't want anyone in his way or anyone putting any extra pressure on him as he makes his way into turn 18. Now, as he comes on through, Ben Hicks is still in the pits, I can report, and James Slate's making his way out of the pits now with the repair works of the car done. We do still have a number of drivers chopping and changing with regards to repair work on the car, and I believe George Bland has just found his way past what was Kurt Van Hoenack, and this is a bit of a scramble here as they make the way down. I think that is, unless I'm mistaken, that's Kurt Van Hoenack, who's trying to find himself some space on circuit to let Matt Caruana and Hakel Gustad through as they make the way into the right and kick at 20, and it's very close there, but Hakel Gustad tucks in behind Matt Caruana and comes on through there. I think there was a little bit of a miscommunication with regards to Van Hoenack in trying to let the two pros through, and now he's got Didi de Vlaming, his teammate, behind them at Change BE driver as they make the way down into the braking zone for turn number 23 into Murray's corner there, but that looked a little bit tight and a little bit nerve-wracking for all of them as they make the way through. George Blandhauer lifts off, and I think Kurt Van Hoenack will look for that opportunity to come back on in and battle for what is P20 overall, P5 in the AM class as they make the way out to turn 1 out of Hell's Corner and back onto the mountain straight. That was a very awkward one there, but everyone seems to have negotiated it in the end as they make their way up Conrad once again. And well, we can see now, I think Hakel Gustad's going to look for the move here. He's decided the gloves are coming off, and he goes to the move up the inside of Caruana. He gets it planted on the apex there of Quarry, and as they now make their way up into the cutting, now the battle commences here. They both decided, right, it's time to go to town, and as they make their way up into the cutting, we're hearing that Matthew Addy's had enough. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but now it's Hakel Gustad who leads the pair of them as they make their way onto turn 6 and 7. And in fact, we take a look at what's happened to Matthew Addy that has led to him jumping to the pits. Well, this was only moments ago, and Matthew Addy was running by himself here as he went through, and he just simply got it wrong through turn 9, damaged the right-hand side of the car, and I think in the end the car, well, the suspension will have collapsed on one side on that impact on the wall. At least the right-hand side tyres will not be in the best state of wear, and Matthew Addy, I think, has decided to call time and jump back into the pits, and it has not gone the way he would have wanted it, as meanwhile here, Caruana has now got himself right behind Matt Emmons, who, well, to be fair to Matt Emmons, he can't really go anywhere right now, although he is a lap down, and as they make the way out of the corner, you can see Caruana trying to scramble to find his way past. Matt Emmons trying to find a place to let him pass, and now they make the way down Conrad here, and Gristad is going to be all in as they go roaring on down the straight here, down towards the chase they go. On Conrad they are, and as they make the way into the right and Kinker 20, you can see Gristad just staying there, and Caruana right behind him, not going for it this time. I think Caruana giving him the opportunity here to try and increase the pace, but otherwise I think he'll be looking for it very soon. Or will he be peeling into the pits? Could it be the case that it's a sign that Caruana is going to run it into the pits? No, he stays out. Both of them stay out here. Remember, they still both need to do a pit stop. They have not completed their 2 mandatory stops. They've only done 1 so far, and we'll wait to see which one of them flinches first as they make the way across that timing line once again and go on to lap number 37. But as they make the way across, I can tell you that in the battle for the Pro-Am win, it is Daniel Holmer right now in P2 in the Pro-Am class, P5 overall, who is maintaining that gap of 3.5 to 3.7 seconds to Jean-Louis Deschamps right now, the leader of the Pro-Am class. You can see him there just off in the distance in the picture as they made their way onto Conrad, and as they come down right now, Daniel Holmer having a really strong performance in the Bright Esports driver. Well, he's come quite late in the day in terms of him bringing those performances together in the season, but then again, I think he's ending this season on a perfect high, and it sets him up very nicely for whether he's coming back for season 3, his next adventure in iRacing, as he makes his way down towards the chase here, and looking very good right now, the number 179 driver, as he makes his way through. Could he potentially take the win in the end and end it on a brilliant high as he makes his way down towards Murray's Corner? As he comes on down, really the closest battle on circuit right now is the battle for P2 overall and in the Pro class, and that is Gristad versus Matt Caruana as they make the way on through, and as they come charging on down. We have just had confirmation with regards to Addy being in the wall from Martin Brinkworth as well, but no safety car needed for that, and Matthew Addy is returning to the circuit, and he is going to try and finish this race. Oosterhuis, Alexander Batak and Navarro Debova also in the pits, all hand repair work done, and of course they no longer have that fast repair, so they will not have that benefit anymore, and they will have to go for the longer pit stop and the longer repair time. And as everybody makes the way on down, we do look to our battle for P2 here, and we can see that Gristad holding that position, and Matt Caruana not as close this time, and in fact just waiting behind. And I do think a pit stop's coming soon. And I think now Caruana might be trying to do just some extra fuel saving here, and perhaps it's the case that Caruana now feels as though there's no need to go hunting the win. He just wants to bring home that P2 and finish ahead of Gristad. Now, to be fair, that would make sense given the fact with Billy Fletcher retiring from the race. It is the case that Caruana just needs to finish now and make sure that at the end of the day that Gristad does not get an absolutely tremendous result in terms of Gristad would take the win and Caruana would finish with no points. So that's why I think he's running as close as he is behind. But meanwhile, I can tell you one battle that keeps going back and forth. Kurt Van Hernacker and George Bland here, they're battling for P5 in the AM class as they go side by side through turn 1 here, giving one another plenty of space, and we can see George Bland getting the better traction on the exit in the McLaren, but now it's the drag race up the mountain straight here, and as they make the way on up, Van Hernacker just a very slow exit, and of course being on that inside line, he can't use the full width of the exit compared to what is George Bland, and now I think they traded places, and we'll have to wait and see if they come back together. But these two keep changing places lap on lap, which is absolutely fantastic to see as they make the way on around. Now, whilst they're going on through, one driver we haven't talked about for some time, and he has been a key player in this race, is one driver known as what is Didi Vlaminck here, running currently in P12 overall, P6 in the Pro-Am class, and the change B1 driver, keeping it together right now. It's been a race which hasn't quite gone his way in terms of there's been a number of moments where he's had to deal with damage to the car, and also just found himself in a bit of a disadvantageous situation with other drivers coming on through, other classes of drivers coming on through in particular, but right now running a solid race, running at a very comfortable pace, currently running in the 205s, and well, I think Vlaminck here just looking to bring home what has been a good season and looking to come home with some good points to wrap things up. And if he comes home in P6 in the Pro class, it will be a good set of points. And well, in terms of who he's chasing, well, it is Matthew Hodges right now, who is the best part of 12 seconds up the road from him. He's got a comfort barrier of 8.5 seconds to Edward Lack behind. But speaking of Edward Lack, well, here's the CXR Project Black driver. who right now making his way past Gus Franken here in a drag race, but I think you'll be expecting that Gus Franken will lift off. We can see a flash of lights there from Gus Franken. Is in fact the Ferrari actually getting the better run down the back straight here of Conrad, and we can see Edward Lack now trying to come through once again. He's making it clear he wants the outside to inside line here, and Gus Franken giving him the space in the end and letting him on through, and Edward Lack gains the place here, and he's now got 8.7 seconds to go to hunt down Didi Blaming. And we know the CXR Project Black driver Edward Lack, a very fast driver, a very determined driver, as we see Gus Franken peeling into the pits for his second and final scheduled stop, as we now only have what is the best part of 36 minutes to go in this race. And indeed that is the second stop, as he makes one in from P3 in the AM class here, and I believe Jochen Seeger will take over that position, but of course remember he has also got to make another stop at some point in this race. As he comes on through and as he makes his way all the way down right now, I can tell you that you can see it as he comes along. He's not coming into the pits at this time, he stays on out, and meanwhile a bit further down the road from him is George Bland, who has stayed ahead of Kurt Van Hoornacker. And well, where is Van Hoornacker? He is just being passed, or lapped we should say, by Edward Lack, who comes on through the CXR Project Black machine between the two AM class drivers. Well, they're making their way on around right now. We do look a little bit further up the order once again, and the driver we haven't talked about for some time, Kenny Herriman's here, the RP Motorsports Experts driver. He's currently in P8. He's right behind Phil McDougall here, and it is the case the pro driver chasing down the Pro-Am, and they will likely be swapping places in the near future. And for Phil McDougall in particular, this is going to be quite important in terms of not wanting to lose any time to Lamborghini in front of him, because he can't really afford to, given he's trying to hunt down Daniel Holmer and Jean-Louis Deschamps. But of course we've got plenty of time to go. And the big question that hangs over Phil McDougall is, will he come out ahead of Daniel Holmer and Deschamps when they make their final pit stops? Now in terms of pit stops, we're hearing that Gus Franken has just left the pit box and is making his way back out into the circuit. Lucas Romano has also come into the pits, the RP Motorsports driver. But meanwhile, nobody else coming on in. Everybody else still keeping their cards close to their chest. And indeed, we'll wait to find out what's going to happen. I think now there is a bit of a twitch down in the paddock with regards to who is going to pit first and reveal what their strategy is, or when they were planning to take that second pit stop. But meanwhile, I can tell you in the battle for P2 overall in the pro class, as they make their way past the pit entry and they do not use it, is Matt Caruana, the GTWR RHG Academy driver here, chasing after Ignium Motorsports Hackenstad as they make their way across that timing line and go on to lap 40. And at this point the arms and legs must be absolutely knackered, but they soldier on all the same. But speaking of, well, knackered, I'm hearing that Edward Lack's had a bit of a moment, and where is that? That looks to be at the chase. Now what on earth has happened to Edward Lack? Well, making his way on down here, he wasn't battling with anyone, so it's a mistake of his own doing, I would presume. Coming under brake in the rear of the car, just stepping out there as he went through the apex of turn 21. That's quite a rare thing to see from anybody, particularly from Edward Lack, but it's gone wrong there, and perhaps just overcooked the tyres a little bit too much and letting the car roll on back and then bringing it back up to racing speed. But I think Lack coming into the pits there, I think there's going to be a flat spot on those tyres, and he's going to need to get a new set on, because those tyres must be in a very nasty state as he makes his way into the pits and they start servicing the car. And I think it's just to put fuel in, and well, that means he's going to be making one more pit stop here as he now gets himself back up to speed, and that is going to be, unless I'm very much mistaken, a fourth pit stop for Edward Lack. He has been in the pits more than anybody so far, it has to be said, apart from Morten Esustus and also Alexander Batak and Navarro de Bova, who've both had 4 pit stops as well. But we look from them back to what is now the battle for P2, as we said earlier. And as we take a quick sip of water, we can see Matt Caruana staying right with Hackenstad as they make their way on out. But they are losing time to Mark Fletcher once again. It does seem as though Mark Fletcher just keeping that gap honest at 9 seconds and slowly expanding. Now, as they make the way down Conrad this time, of course, we are waiting for that second pit stop to arrive. Now, in terms of who is likely to gain in the pit stop, well, we'll have to wait and see with both drivers. They've both been running very similar strategies. I would say that Hackenstad, based on the way he was able to utilise the undercut for his first pit stop, we are going to see a repeat from Hackenstad. I think he will try and go for a second undercut here, and he will gain that advantage as into the pits goes Matthew Hodges. We've also got Morten Esustus parked off circuit there on the final corner, waiting for everybody to clear before he gets himself back up to speed. But that is going to be the interesting question with regards to Caruana versus Gustad, is in terms of how these two play on out. But meanwhile, as they make the way on through, we are hearing that Matthew Hodges into the pits for his final stop. And we've also got DD Verlaine coming on in here. And these are going to be critical stops for the pair as they make their way in. As we see Verlaine just parking up very shortly. But as they come on through, well, who else is looking at a potential pit stop? Well, we know that your Consiga will need to pit at some point soon. He's currently P3 in the AM class. And as he makes his way around, that will give P3 back to Gus Franken as we understand it. As Matthew Hodges has completed his pit stop and now makes his way back up to speed on pit exit. But as we can see, you can see it here holding on for the time being and looking very good. And to be fair, even if he drops quite far down the order, he can't be angry at himself. It has not gone his way today, but to be fair, it has been a very valiant effort and he has recovered a huge portion of this race. And well, a top 5 finish is on the cards, and I think he'll be very proud of that one all the same. As we're indeed, the Verlaine is making his way out of the pits now, and he's just finished his pit stop. As we see, you can see her making his way up the mountain straight with Jason Landry, the pro driver, just behind. But meanwhile, a critical pit stop. Jean-Louis Deschamps is into the pits and Daniel Holmer stays out here. And Holmer, to be fair, has already made 2 stops. So could this be it? Could it be that today is the Swede's chance to shine for Bright Esports as he makes his way up the mountain straight here? We will wait and see as Stefan Gamble Rasmussen also comes into the pits. I can tell you as I look out of my commentary box window, it's the case that our AM leader is coming on in for his final scheduled stop. But what about Daniel Holmer? And also, well, with all this happening, as they make the way on around, where's Phil McDougall? Phil McDougall coming into the pit, so it is going to be another stop. And as we had clarified to us by Def's Hourglass earlier on, it was the case that repairing damage, he did not use it as part of the scheduled stop sequence. So Phil McDougall, in the end, will have to make one more stop. And I think now we'll be looking at battling for P3 in the class when it's all said and done. But all the pit stops are kicking off now with only half an hour to go. Mark Fletcher, our race leader and our pro category leader, is in. Meanwhile, Matt Caruana stays out one more lap. The Hackongestad comes on in as well. My goodness, they're all pulling the trigger at the same time. Jean-Louis Deschamps has come out of the pit. He is going to return to what will be, we believe, P3 in the Pro-Am class, with Callum Regarton having already made 2 pit stops. Now, is Callum Regarton going to the end? That will be the big question, because if he is, then that will effectively mean that Callum Regarton is now in the hunt for the potential win here today at Bathurst in the Pro-Am class as he makes one through. And we know he can pull these incredible strategies, but we look back here to Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, who exits the pits. Matt Edmonds, meanwhile, parked up in the pits. You can see him there in the rear of your picture, right at the back of the pit lane. As we see, that is what is Mark Fletcher up on the jacks in the pits right now. So all these pit stops are coming together. Stefan Gamble Rasmussen now returns to the lead of the AM class as he emerges from the pit lane, where you can see it. Meanwhile, Jochen's gone around for another lap, and as he makes his way through, that'll be P2, but remember, he does have a stop to take. Meanwhile, Matt Edmonds making his way on through off the pit jacks very shortly, so they're putting the tyres on the car there. And we'll have to wait and see regards to that. But meanwhile, Hackongestad comes out of the pits here. And as he makes his way out, he returns out in P3 overall and in class. Meanwhile, Mark Fletcher just up the road. And Mark Fletcher trying to get some temperature in those tyres. He doesn't want to be caught out here in terms of those tyre temperatures going up into turn 2, Quarry Corner. A nightmare corner for the Audi on cold tyres, as we saw earlier on. And as he makes his way on through, keeps it nicely together here. But Hackongestad has closed the gap to Mark Fletcher down to 6.3 seconds. It was 9.3 when they pitted. And now it's come down by 3 seconds. So Gristad will push everything he can to close this down now as they make the way on around. Matt Caruana, of course, well, he's further up the road, and Matt Caruana currently making his way through the chase chicane. And as they make the way on around circuit, we wait to hear if Matt Caruana is coming into the pit. I'm just listening right now in my ear to see if I'm hearing anything. Nothing so far. Matt Caruana goes around for another lap, I do believe. So Caruana extending his second stint, the longest of anybody, and this will be huge. But meanwhile, talking to drivers for extending and huge results, Daniel Holmer here, if he's not going to pit again, this will be a huge achievement. But I do think that Daniel Holman may have to make one more pit stop here, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it would be great to see the Bright Esports driver take a win. It would be his only win in the series, but it would be the perfect occasion to take a win to wrap up his season, as we're hearing that Morten Oosthus is back into the pits once again, having a very difficult day. But now we are just waiting. We are at the mercy of the final pit stops to come and how the field plays out. Of course, remember, we could have an instant over the mountain in the final moments, and that may trigger a safety car. We do have that risk, of course, and everybody will be aware of it. It can happen. As you can see, it makes its way into the pit. I'm not wishing it, but it can happen. And if that happens, it may just upset the strategies even more and mix the order up even more before we reach the finish. But we'll wait and see. But what I can tell you right now for certain, you can see it making his way in for his second scheduled stop. And I do believe as he peels his way on in, it's going to be quite a quick stop. They'll do everything they can to get that car back on out. And where it will be the case because Matt Emmons will be retaking that position off him very quickly. In fact, no, they will not, because you can see that he's listed as pit exit. No, he's still in the pit lane there. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We have a glitch on our timing screen. I thought it was going to literally come on in and exit. And that will be Matt Emmons, who returns to P2, as we understand it, in the AM class. He comes on through to take back P15 overall, P2 in AM, as he makes his way across that timing line. Now just under half an hour to go at this point as he makes his way on through the left hand there and now goes charging up the mountain straight. Looking good so far, Matt Emmons, as he continues to recover this race, remembering the fact that unless Gamble Rasmussen heavily drops it, we are not expecting Matt Emmons to be able to gain any more places versus his peers in class. But to be fair, what was a very difficult start to this race, which saw him into the wall, he has recovered this one very well. And speaking now of, well, potential championship winners, we can see Matt Caruana coming into the pits here. He's coming from the lead now as he makes his way in. A minute behind is Mark Fletcher. Remember, Mark Fletcher did have to go up on the jacks to get the tyres changed, and the Alshid Esports driver will be giving it everything he's got, as Hakon Gristad is falling backwards from Mark Fletcher. It has not worked out for Gristad. He has dropped back by 3 seconds, but what about Caruana? Well, they have got the car up on the jacks. You can see there very briefly the camera not angled perfectly. Let's try and get a better angle. In fact, it's not up on the jacks right now. They're just putting the fuel in the car here, but Matt Caruana will of course, as we see Edward Lack jumping to the pits there in the background, it will be the case that Caruana will have quite an extended stop here. But we look back to Mark Fletcher, who's making his way right now down towards what is the chase. And as he comes into the chicane here, nice and smooth through the chicane, and that's typical of Mark Fletcher's driving style, a very smooth approach to the corners. He was 9 seconds ahead of Matt Caruana back when he came into the pits. Will it be still that margin when he comes on through, or will Matt Caruana have a surprise in store? Well, Caruana is still in the pits right now. As we see Fletcher comes across the line, he takes the position, as we can see there, Caruana up on the jacks at long last, and Mark Fletcher comes around. Now, where is Hakon Gristad? Meanwhile, as Daniel Holmer's into the pits for his final stop, and we can see here Hakon Gristad coming on through. As he makes his way through the left-hander, he is going to gain considerably on what is there Matt Caruana as he makes his way up the hill towards turn number 2. And while Caruana's still being serviced, and I think for Caruana at this point it doesn't matter too much to him, as they brought him down off the jacks. They're still doing work on the car, and there's Daniel Holmer, who's just pulled into his pit box. Now, in terms of the battle for the prime win, here's Callum Regarton making his way on around. Now, we do wonder whether Callum Regarton's got one more stop to pull as he makes his way past the pit entry, so it's not going to be a pit stop this time. But Matt Caruana with a slow stop, he is going to be coming out in P3 overall, but a long way down off of Hakon Gristad and Mark Fletcher. So it's Mark Fletcher's to lose now as Callum Regarton takes the lead of the Prime class here in the closing 24 minutes of this race. And as he comes on through turn number 1 right now, well, if he's not going to pit again, this is a phenomenal recovery to former Callum Regarton, and we've seen this time and time again from Callum Regarton, just this ability to pull wins out of nowhere when he's all the way down the order. He's had a disaster of a race, and we can see it meanwhile as he makes his way on up towards turn 2. It is Daniel Holmer who leaves the pits now. Where is Jean-Luc Deschamps? There is Deschamps coming on through, and Deschamps makes his way into the left-hander. It's going to be close, but Deschamps, I think, is just about to jump Daniel Holmer as they make their way up towards what is at Quarry. And you can see Holmer there in the rear of your picture. He comes on out, but it is the case that Deschamps has got a greater gap now. That gap is at 3.5 seconds as they make the way of roaring up towards Quarry. In fact, that gap has come down by a 10th compared to when Deschamps took his pit stop and then Holmer ran out on circuit. But now Holmer having to deal with moving past George Bland here. And to be fair, George Bland, the AM driver, giving him the space, but I think Holmer at this point, well, he's expecting Bland to give him a little bit more than this, but to be fair, Bland's not causing too many issues, and I think he'll back out up into the cutting, and he does indeed here as they make the way into turns 3 and 4, and Daniel Holmer now pursuing Jean-Luc Deschamps to the finish. Of course, we will wait to see with Callum Regarton whether he is due one more pit stop, but to be fair, Callum Regarton has made 2 stops already, so it could be a bit of a 50-50 on that. call and with regards to the strategy, but right now with everything playing out and all of the scheduled stops being made as we understand it, what this effectively means is that as of the remainder of this race, it is Mark Fletcher's to lose in the Pro class right now, albeit on that last lap he was a second a lap slower compared to Hakan Gestad. So as a result, well, in terms of the time remaining, lap time being just over 2 minutes with what is approximately 22 minutes this race remaining, we have got around to the region of 11 to 12 laps remaining, including the one that Mark Fletcher is currently on, as he makes his way past Kurt van Hoornacker through 5 into 6, and as he comes through 7 and into 8 into the triple left sequence of turns 8 through to 10 into McPhillamy. It is the case that Mark Fletcher, so long as he does not lose more than 7/10 of a second a lap, he can cruise this one to the finish versus Hakan Gestad. But Hakan Gestad right now I think has got something very important to say about that, because he is flying as we see Morten Oosthuus is off circuit there into the gravel, and well, now Gestad right on the back of DD Verlaming, who is in P12, a lap down as the Pro-Am driver, but Gestad is losing time. Arm and hand over fist here being tucked in behind, but to be fair, this is what happens when you catch a driver on the mountain. It's not as though they can make themselves invisible, and Gestad will know that, everybody will know that, and now all that advantage he was carving out, he has lost. It was coming down to 7.4 seconds, it's now gone back up to 8.6 seconds, and I think the Norwegian at this point will be cursing his lucky stars with regards to the fact that he's just lost that advantage, and he's got it all to do again in pure lap pace as he makes his way on down. But to be fair to him, he's now got quite a bit of room before he catches up to Kurt van Hoornacker, who is 5.1 seconds up the road from him and is in P19 and a lap down therefore. But as we look from what is Hakan Gestad to Matt Caruana, well, Caruana with that slow stop, and I do think there may have been some repair work done to the car as he makes his way down Outer Forest Elbow. Caruana just needs to bring this home now in order to take the Pro Championship. He doesn't need to do anything spectacular with his rival Billy Fletcher retiring from the race, and as he makes his way down, you can see behind there we've got Gus Franken, and you can see it coming together, and Gus Franken under pressure here, as you can see it's going to go for the move. They're side by side, but Gus Franken a little bit slower down the straight here, and you can see it just comes on through to take P3, the final podium position in what is the AM class here, and Next Gen Racing Orange driver putting a fantastic performance to bring this race back together, as we're hearing that Jeremy DeBow is into the pit, and as they all make the way down in towards the final corner, you can see now just behind them is Ben Hicks, who's on the same lap as them. He's currently P17, the Pro-Am driver, P8 in his class, and he'll want to get past those two AM drivers and go hunting after what is up the road from him, DD Verlaming, as Jeremy DeBow leaves the pits. He's left his pit box, and he's going to be making his way out behind Ben Hicks very shortly. Where is Jeremy DeBow? There he is in the rear of your picture as he makes one up. We focus the camera on him, and Jeremy DeBow now will see Ben Hicks up the road from him and think, okay, if I can beat Ben Hicks and get 1 or 2 more places come the finish, I could beat Ben Hicks to P3 in the Pro-Am Championship. Well, Jean-Louis Deschamps looking certain to take P2 in the runner-up spot as they make the way on up the hill and into Quarry Corner. It'll be interesting to see how the complexion of this plays out in the remaining time. If anything has been certain here at Bathurst, is that it's only an instant away from seeing everything shaken up as they make the way on around. And we can see Paul King there in the Facebook chat asking the question, or wondering if it was unsafe pit entrance or speeding in the pit lane for Caruana for the added pit stop time. I suspect so, because we did see a similar situation occur at what was Twin Ring Motegi for Billy Fletcher with what was, I think it was speeding in the pit lane, or it may have been an unsafe pit entry, but Billy Fletcher had to wait in his pit box for a sizable amount of time, and his pit stop was incredibly long as a result. Or was it actually going up onto the tyres, onto the jacks for changing tyres in the end? But there was a delay to his pit stop, I do remember that, but we will wait and see, and I'm sure we'll hear from Caruana later on if he is able to bring this championship home. Because remember tonight, ladies and gentlemen, for our post-race interviews, we bring you interviews with our race winner in each class and also our championship winner, and we can hear from Caruana then, assuming he does take the championship. Meanwhile, we see Jeremy DeBow over here giving it away, I think, to Callum Regarton, who running in P4 right now. I think Callum Regarton is going to the end here. This is looking very promising for the Luxem 24 MV eSports driver to bring it all the way to the finish as he makes his way down towards turn at 20 and into 21 he goes. And as he comes all the way down at this point, well, it is the case, I think, for Callum Regarton. He's doing everything in his power to bring home the best possible result for Luxem 24 MV Esports to give them that opportunity to take the team championship. But into the pits he comes. We thought there was going to be another stop. He comes on in with a 30-second advantage. Now the question is, we would expect would take the lead back here as he makes his way on through into the chase and through the chicane and heading down towards what is Murray's Corner. And as he makes his way down, we look to Callum Regarton. They're currently putting fuel in the car. They're not doing anything with regards to put it up on jacks, but as he's currently sat there, we see here's the case. Well, Callum Regarton is leaving his pit box now, so he did the tyre change earlier on, and it's Jean-Louis Deschamps who makes his way on through. This is going to be very close. We just see Callum Regarton coming out the pits, and this is what the advantage will be when it's all said and done. Jean-Louis Deschamps retakes the prime lead, but it's only an advantage of 3 seconds, well 2.9 seconds between him and Callum Regarton. You can see behind there's Daniel Holmer, who's just missed out on taking P2 back, and then further back we've got Phil McDougall there in P4. We effectively now have a four-way fight for the prime podium in the final 17 minutes here, and it is all on the shoulders of Jean-Louis Deschamps. Can he bring home the win here, or will it be the case that Callum Regarton can do it, or could it be the case that Daniel Holmer brings home his first ever win in the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship if he can nail this and stay with Callum Regarton and hunt down Jean-Louis Deschamps with him? It will all be told in the remainder of the time. We will have to wait and find out, but right now anything is possible, and we'll keep in mind this. Phil McDougall, in terms of his laps, was lapping at the pace of his peers. It was the case that having to come into the pits for repair work to the steering rack of the car is why he's in P4 right now. Otherwise, he would be right up there at the front of this pack. And I think for Phil McDougall, he will feel he's got a point to prove, as Kurt Van Hoenacker is in the pits right now, and he's down in P19, P5 in the M class. I think that will drop him down the order once he's made his pit stop. But as we continue to watch Phil McDougall here coming down out the dipper and heading up towards Forest Hill, as Van Hoenacker leaves his pit box out of my commentary box window, I can see that Phil McDougall just soldiering on. That meanwhile we look back to Jean-Louis Deschamps here, and to give you a sense of perspective, well, there is Callum Regarton just a little bit further back and closing already. Callum Regarton is like smelling blood in the water right now. He is on a charge. He's already dropped Daniel Holmer, and he's charging after Jean-Louis Deschamps, and Deschamps will not want Callum Regarton getting on through. Well, to be fair though for Deschamps, if he was to just give the position to Callum Regarton and then finish in P2 or even P3, he would still secure the runner-up spot in what is the Pro-Am Championship. But it would be the case, I think he would like to show to Callum Regarton that he can take the win from the Luxim 24 MV Sports driver as they make the way into another lap. And my goodness, Callum Regarton in that lap alone, his outlap taking 1.2 seconds, almost 1.3 seconds out of Jean-Louis Deschamps here, and he is on a mission to take that win for his team as they make the way up the mountain straight once again. And will Daniel Holmer, by comparison, being dropped there by Callum Regarton, but faster than Jean-Louis Deschamps here. So Daniel Holmer will be looking for his season best performance. Will it be a P3 or will it be a P2 on the podium, or could he even sneak in the win should something happen? We will have to wait and see as they make the one through. And I'm hearing that Jason Landry is into the pit lane once again here for a third and final stop. So the drivers who decided to pit early there, I think they decided to put fuel in the car to shorten what would eventually have to be a third stop anyway. They just decided to put the fuel on in order to compensate for the tyre change later on and capitalise on what was that safety car period. But meanwhile, as they make the one free, it is the drivers who, to be fair, decided to stay out behind the safety car, who gained the most in the end, and so long as they didn't make a mistake, and our top four in particular have gained and got that track position. But now, as we can see here, Jean-Louis Deschamps, who is being reeled in so tremendously by Callum Regarton, as we ride on board here with the Lamborghini driver, who is giving it everything in his power to close down Deschamps. And that time it's coming out, you could just see it in the body language of the cars, where Jean-Louis Deschamps just looks as though he's scrambling for lap time. Meanwhile, Callum Regarton, it's almost as if that car is on rails as they make the way down Conrad here. They go charging all the way down towards what will be into the chase chicane as they make their way down the straight. Callum Regarton now firmly in the tow in the slipstream of the Porsche in front of him. We know the one weakness of the Porsche is the fact that it lacks straight line speed compared to its peers, and as they make their way through the chicane, Regarton is right there now as they come on out and head down towards Murray's Corner. They've still got the best part of what is 13 minutes to go when they cross that timeline to go on to lap number 49. I think it's not a case of if Callum Regarton can go for a move, it's a case of when, and well, when will Jean-Louis Deschamps decide to defend hard and hold him at bay? That will also be the question as they now make the way through turn number 1 through Hell's Corner and onto the mountain straight. We look to the exterior cameras here, and as they go roaring on up this time, it is the case. Well, Garton getting a good exit, Deshawn's getting a good exit, but it's that straight line drag race, and we can see with the slipstream also in effect here, Garton gaining massively as they make their way all the way up into turn number 2. They come into quarry. It is, meanwhile, Deshawn's just waiting there, waiting to pounce. Also waiting to pounce to defend. Calamari Garton waiting to pounce, but I think he's going to now wait to go for the move when they come out of Forest Elbow. And as they make their way in to the cut, and there'll be no move this time, but it will be a move or an attempt at a move when they make their way out of Forest Elbow and down Conrod. Now, as they make their way on through, I can tell in the battle for the overall lead, the pro lead, Mark Fletcher is still leading by 7.3 seconds ahead of Hakon Gustad. Hakon Gustad is closing that gap down by 7 tenths of a second. At that rate of closure, he needs to close it down a bit more. He needs to close it down at roughly 9 tenths of a second every lap in order to be right there. But we can see it is the case that Jean-Louis Deschamps gets it a little bit wrong. Just a small bit of hesitation on the run out of McPhillamy. And now as they make their way down through the dipper, we ride on board the gearbox here of the Porsche 911 driver as they make the way down towards Forest Elbow, and the Belgian under huge pressure as Calamari Garton gets very close here on Forest Elbow exit, and now it's all about the drag race as they make the way on down. It's a long charge, and as they come down the straight here, you're going to be seeing that Deschamps will hold that car to what is the outside into turn at number 20 because he wants the inside under braking into the chicane. Calamari Garton is made to go to the inside-outside line. They make the way down, and you can see Jean-Louis Deschamps giving all the space, and then I think just running a little bit wide there and backing off under consideration. And I think Jean-Louis Deschamps feeling that at the end of the day he's going to have to give the place away in the end because the battling will be so intense, and I don't think he feels as though he can hold Calamari Garton at bay. And as a result, that means as we come to the end of lap number 49, we go on to lap number 50. Calamari Garton is now your Pro-Am leader, our championship winner, of course, in the Pro-Am class, having won it at the end of round number 10. Well, he's wrapping up this season on what has been really a performance that visualizes or provides essentially a metaphor for what his season has all been about. When he hasn't been right up there from the start and he's been down towards the back, he's found a way to come all the way through and take wins and get the results. He's just been an unstoppable force in the end, but that is not to take away from Jean-Louis Deschamps, who right now, if things were to finish as they were, will comfortably finish runner-up in the Pro-Am class. And to be fair, whilst he may have picked the one car with all the deficits on the straights, it's been there with the handling corners and it has had the driver to go with it, and he will be the deserved runner-up. There's no doubt about that in the close contest for P2 between him, Ben Hicks and also Jeremy DeBoer. Now, where is Ben Hicks? To give you an idea, he is here, the Igni Motorsport Blaze driver, down in P14 overall, P7 in class, as I think we've had an incident involving Ben Hicks and Matthew Addy. We'll just try to find out what exactly's happened. Well, here's Matthew Addy only moments ago. Now, as he was making his way over Skyline, the car looks like it's become unsettled. He's had to go very heavy on the brakes, and he's lost it down into the corner. And Ben Hicks stopping the car, to be fair, and both of them managing to avoid contact, but Matthew Addy pointing the wrong way and having to get the car turned on around. So that explains exactly what happened. And then drivers coming on through, and, well, we can see, no, we haven't had anything else with regards to that. I think it's the case that Matthew Addy has been able to clear himself from track, and I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that since last time we talked about potential retirements and incidents, we have had some further retirements. We've got Navarro DeBoer in the pit lane right now. I think they're still doing work on trying to fix the car. We've got Alexander Batak, who has retired. We've also got what is Morten Usus has retired, and Edward Lack has retired. So we have lost what is 7 drivers, and we've got an 8th driver in the pits right now who's in amongst those retirements, and we will wait and see if Navarro DeBoer is coming back out onto the circuit. So we started off with 30 drivers. We still have 22 running out on the circuit, potentially 23, depending on whether young Navarro DeBoer, the AM driver, is able to bring the car back together and get it back out for the final stage of this race. We've only got 9 minutes to go, and with those remaining 9 minutes, well, Jean-Louis Deschamps lost the lead of the Pro-Am class, but now as he makes his way up the mountain straight, he's got Daniel Holmer closing up, and Daniel Holmer, to give you an idea, is closing at a rate of 4 to 5 tenths a lap. And as he makes his way up the mountain straight this time, well, at this rate of closure, he will be there on the offense versus the Porsche driver on the final 2 to 3 laps as they both make their way through Quarry Corner. Meanwhile, in the AM class, I can tell you that Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, who we are looking at now, the Switchback Motorsport driver, he has been, well, he's just been in a world of his own in this race. He has nailed it time and time again, and if it finishes as it is right now, he will be our AM Championship winner by a reasonable margin over Matt Emmons, who'll be coming home P2 when all is said and done by the looks of things, and that I believe will be where he finishes in the AM Championship, and Gamborg Rasmussen in pulling it out of the bag right when it mattered most. But we will wait and see. Of course, it's not over yet. The checkered flag is not waving and anything can happen. But Gamborg Rasmussen in a very safe space with an advantage of almost 50 seconds. In fact, it's 51 seconds over Matt Emmons behind him as he makes his way on around. And then we talk about the pro class as we see Mark Fletcher making his way through turn number 7 here. And the Altitude Esports driver, he took the lead of this race earlier on and he has not let go of it. He's been right up there. He is being reeled in by Hakon Gustad at a rate of approximately 4 to 6 tenths a lap, but he can afford to lose that time right now with the number of laps remaining based on the time remaining in this race. And well, for Gustad, it's all about chasing after Fletcher relentlessly, and for Fletcher, it's just about keeping it together. As we're hearing that Kurt Van Hoenacker is into the pit lane, and well, in terms of closest battles out on the circuit right now, I can tell you that you can see it here is closing up to Gus Franken for the final spot on the AM podium. Now, as they make the way out to turn 1 and go charging up the mountain straight here, here's the situation, I think, with Kurt Van Hoenacker entering the pit, so losing the opportunity to chase after these guys. And we're hearing that Matthew Addy has had another incident out on circuit, and I believe Matthew Addy has jumped to the pits. He has indeed. I can see him just out my commentary box window now, so that has demoted him down to P22. It is the case that you can see it trying to find a way past Gus Franken here in the closing moments of this race. And we're inching ever closer for the final spot on the AM podium. And of course, this result for him may give him the opportunity to jump ahead of Matthew Addy, depending on how the maths works out at the very final stage of this championship. And we'll have to see how that plays out later on when the final classifications come on in. But we can see, you can see, given that pursuit of Gus Franken as they make the way over the mountain now. And as they make their way through McPhillamy, you can see that they're really just managing that gap, not getting too close through the section where you can't really overtake, instead just waiting there to pounce, giving himself that opportunity. Although he loses out a little bit through the dipper there, which is to be noted. He lost out quite a bit, but now he closes up once again as they make the way down into Forest Elbow. And as they come through turn 18, now it's all about the exit here. And the BMW, of course, neutered midway through the season with regards to the balance of performance adjustment, where it lost its straight line speed. And as they come charging on down the Conrad Straight here, it is going to be the case that Jochen Seeger will be a bit too far back, I think, to attack Gus Franken into the chase, but he will be preparing this for the next lap. Meanwhile, just up the road from them, I can tell you that Lucas Romano chasing after Jeremy DeBova here. These two, well, they spent some time out on circuit together, and RP Motorsports Juniors, Lucas Romano here inching ever closer to the McChange B1 driver as they make the way into the braking zone. This is the battle for P8 in the Prime class, P15 overall, as they make the way on down. And in the big battle, which we are also keeping our eyes on here, Daniel Holmer, who is closing up to Jean-Louis Deschamps in the hunt for P2 in the Prime class come the end of this race. And of course, this is the battle for the final 2 steps of the podium, with Phil McDougall 7 seconds back and dropping away from these two, it would seem. Phil McDougall not quite on the pace of these two as they make the way on or around. But I can tell you that Daniel Holmer, that last lap closed up by 8 tenths of a second. Daniel Holmer is going all in here. He knows, whilst it's not going to be a win, this will feel like the win for him, because it will be his season best performance. And to be fair, I know I'm singing his praise a lot, ladies and gentlemen, but the Bright Esports outfit, their drivers have come alive in the second half of the season. Daniel Holmer in particular has just been right there at the tip of the spear, and it's great to see a resurgence in form from the Swede. I think at one point was really finding himself in that middle ground, it not working out, particularly rounds 4 through to 6. It just was not going his way, and now, well, at the final hour, he's bringing it together and enjoying the racing once again as he makes his way on around. But meanwhile, as they make the way through the cutting, I can see in the Twitch chat there, we do have a number of individuals, including what is there, Miss Gigi, and also Retouch Academy, cheering on Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, cheering him on to the finish right now. I think it is the case that the Danes in the chat and the Danes tuning in right now are getting very hyped, and Switchback Motorsports as well, getting very, very excited to see the Dane bring the car home to take the AM Championship win in the final hours as he makes his way here through the left-hander of in turn 3 into the cutting of 4, and as he makes his way around right now, No major battles kicking off out on the circuit. You can see it has in fact dropped away from Gus Franken slightly. I'm just checking in with regards to our stewards, and nothing being reported at this time from our stewards. So as a result, we are expecting this to finish unless there is something very sudden in the remaining couple of laps. But I can say that, I can tell you that meanwhile, well, we were saying it wasn't coming together, but Jean-Louis Deschamps I think has had a bad run out of Forest Elbow, because Daniel Holmer is right there as they make their way down into the chase. And Jean-Louis Deschamps here on the outside into the chicane versus Daniel Holmer, who goes all in under braking and gets it done. Now can Deschamps come back in there, as Holmer has got very close, and I think it was a mistake from Deschamps coming out of Forest Elbow, because that gap had come down very rapidly on the exit of the corner. They make their way into the final corner, into Murray's corner. As they make their way through the left-hander here and go on to another lap, I do think that it's Jean-Louis Deschamps who needs to find a way back on in as we ride on board with the Porsche driver. Now, what can he do in this scenario? That is the problem he's got to deal with. He doesn't have straight line speed. He's just got to absolutely hammer these corners, particularly turn 1 and also turn 18. He's got to have the best possible exit and just try to hang close and then be brave on the brakes up into the heavy braking zone. He's going to go for it here, I think, and you can see Holmer reacting by defending hard, and Deschamps, well, he's not going to look for it this far back, surely, as they make their way into a quarry. He waits once again here, but now Deschamps being the pursuer, and Holmer getting a very poor run there on corner exit. This could be the opportunity that Deschamps has been waiting for as they make their way into the cutting, and it's the case. They both go side by side temporarily, but Deschamps locks the rear brakes up there, a little bit of brake dust kicking up, and as a result, he tucks in behind, but Deschamps is not out of this one yet. I think it was a mistake that enabled Holmer to close up as rapidly as he did, but now Deschamps is coming back here and he's going to go for it. He wants this P2. He wants to be the second place man behind Callum Regarton. He doesn't need to do this to come home runner-up in the Prime Championship, but it means a lot to him, and you can see it as he drops back a little bit there, coming through McPhillamy, and as they make the way over the skyline and down into what is the dip. But once again, we will wait and see whether Deschamps is able to close this one up as they make the way on the round. I mean, what I can tell you, our race leader, I believe, has gone on to the final lap, and that is Mark Fletcher, who is just behind these guys right now as they make on through. But Deschamps with a poor run out of Forest Elbow, and I think that's where all the damage was done. I think he lost it at Forest Elbow on the previous lap, and we will take a look back and see if we can see exactly what happened. No, we're not going to quite see it, ladies and gentlemen, but just to play it back how it played out, I think Deschamps having a poor exit there, and as a result, Daniel Holmer just able to sweep round and get it done under braking. And to be fair, Deschamps offered every bit of resistance he could, but in the end, Holmer just able to find a way on through. As we look back to live pictures, as these drivers now make their way onto their final lap, and indeed now as we come towards the very end, and indeed the sun setting off in the distance, it is the case now they will be going on to their final tour. But meanwhile, one driver who is on his final tour, if our maths is correct, he makes his way down towards the chase. It has been a fantastic drive from start to finish as he comes on through the chicane. And if he does come on through to do one more lap, I think he is going to squeeze in another lap. We won't sing his praises just yet. He is going to take us to a 56th lap. Mark Fletcher is going to make us go one more as he comes on through. The final lap, the white flag is out. You can see it waving there as Barry, our flagman, waves it for the final time in the Apex Racing Academy lobby for this season. He goes on to one more lap, and Mark Fletcher, with an advantage of 5 seconds, he is being pursued by this man. This man, Hackenstad, is ripping lap time out of him left, right, and centre, but it's not enough. It is too late in the day, and now he is reliant on Mark Fletcher to have the mother of all moments on the final lap in order to be able to reel it on in. But as they come on through, I can tell you that Lucas Romano is still hunting down Jeremy Debova, and Jean-Louis Deschamps is still trying to find a way to catch Daniel Holmer and get past him. And meanwhile, in P3, Matt Caruana, as he makes his way around to go on to the final lap, he just needs to bring it to the close. He doesn't need to do anything special now as he sees the white flag, and he, in his mind, will know that that championship, that pro championship that he thought would be his at the end of season 1, it wasn't in the end because Billy Fletcher pipped him to the finish. It didn't go his way, but now that championship that he has coveted for so long is only one lap away. He's just got to bring it to the end as we hear that Ben Hicks is into the pits. I don't think he's got enough fuel. I think they're having to do a quick stop for Ben Hicks unless I'm very much mistaken. But right now Matt Caruana cruising to the end here as he makes his way on out. Meanwhile, Callum Regarton, well, coming on through, he will go on to another lap before his race finishes, because he has not, as I understand it, been lapped by our race leader. So he will go on to his final tour now. And will Callum Regarson, the only thing we can say, as he has this habit of doing so time and time again, just pulling these masterclass drives out of nowhere for the team and for himself. And it's absolutely brilliant to see the maestro at work. As meanwhile, Daniel Holmer, he goes on to his final lap now with Jean-Louis Deschamps only inches behind as they make their way on through. But meanwhile, as he comes out of the chase chicane, he has led this one from start to finish. He has not put a single foot wrong, and it is one corner that separates him from the winner Bathurst. And as he takes the final corner, it is Mark Fletcher, your overall winner and your pro category winner at Bathurst in the Apex Racing Academy lobby in season 2 of the GT3 Championship. Behind him will finish P2 Hakon Gustad, who confirms his P3 when all is said and done as we understand it. And then it will be Matt Caruana, who, as he makes his way down the back straight now and comes roaring on down here. It has been a campaign built on just solid drives. When he hasn't been able to win, he has been right there in P2 every time. It has been a campaign focused on staying out of trouble. When the elbows have come out, he's kept his elbows in as much as possible. And as he makes his way down to the final corner, it has eluded him for such a long time. It will be Matt Caruana from the United Kingdom who takes P3, but more importantly is our pro champion for season 2 of the GT3 Championship in the Apex Racing Academy lobby. A brilliant campaign from him as he makes his way across the line, and he will be absolutely joyful, I am sure. But meanwhile, as we can see the mad scramble here coming out of Forest Elbow, Callum Regarson has got some way to go to come to the finish, but one driver who has already crossed the line and flashing his lights in joy right now. We didn't quite catch him across the line, but we catch him now. It is Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen who has taken the win in the AM class, and with that is our AM Championship winner in a fantastic championship campaign from the Dane, without a fault to it in the end when all was said and done. And it will be as he makes his way on down towards the final corner. He's already wrapped up the Pro-Am Championship, but he's going to take another win to add to the virtual trophy cabinet. It will be Callum Regarson who is your Pro-Am winner at Bathurst as he crosses the line there ahead of Daniel Holmer, who in the end held on to P2 in the Pro-Am class, pipping Jean-Louis Deschamps right at the end. And Jean-Louis Deschamps with that result confirms his runner-up status in the Pro-Am Championship in a brilliant campaign where he has made that Porsche work at every circuit, whether it's been the right circuit or the wrong circuit. He has forced that 911 to do well, and it is brilliant from him. Phil McDougall in the end will come home on the lead lap, P7 overall and P4 in the Pro-Am class. And well, you can imagine if it were not for that damage forcing an extra pit stop, Phil McDougall would have been right up there when all is said and done as he crosses the line. A brilliant drive from Phil McDougall as well as he comes across. Kenny Herriman's P8, Matthew Hodges P9 in the pit lane, I believe, as he cruised on in, and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen P10 overall. And again, let's just come back to congratulate what has been a fantastic championship battle in the AM class between him, Matt Emmons, Jochen Seeger and Matthew Addy. But as he makes his way to try and jump his way over the tyre barrier, he goes to the jump, he lands it, but can he get the car back together? Not quite, but thankfully as we see a number of drivers deciding to make the jump over the Bathurst wall there, which is what you do on iRacing. Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen will be proud of that one. And one driver who, to be fair, as he flips the car and doesn't make the tyre barrier, and I think that's what summarises his championship campaign. P2 in the AM class today, and I think it is P2 in the AM class championship. Matt Emmons just not quite able to take the final step to win the AM class, but compared to season 1, he has come a long way as he does donuts in the gravel. And for him, I think it will be a case that he'll be thinking about the times to come as we see Matthew Addy there getting collected by Matt Emmons' wayward car, or is it the other way round? And will P3 in the AM class was Gus Franken, and then it was Matthew Addy P4, and Matthew Addy I think will be the driver who will feel gutted that it all went wrong today at Bathurst for him. What was looking to be the opportunity to take the championship just eluded him. But my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, what a way to wrap up the championship with this final race. But before we can truly bring things to an end, we must get ready for our post-race interviews with our race winners and also our championship winners. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in approximately 5 minutes' time. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're ready to kick off. We're ready to kick off our post-race interviews, and we'll be starting off with our feature race winners. Although, do keep in mind a number of our feature race winners or our 2-hour endurance winners coincide with our championship winners as well. So we won't be quite having a full 6 interviews; they'll be quite constricted. But enough about all the specifics there. We're going to be kicking off with our AM class race winner and our AM class champion, and that is Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen from Denmark. Let's bring him into the interview room. Hello, Stefan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course, Paul. Thank you.
Stefan, I can already hear it in your voice, but how does it feel to have taken the win in the AM class here today at Bathurst, and with that have sealed the AM championship?
I'm really surprised, and I'm really happy about the result. Actually, this was what I was hoping for, but of course, when you go into the race, you don't know what happens, and you need to be both. You need to both have the skills, but also be a bit lucky with the accidents going on in front of you. And I think that I was both in this race. I had very much. I said to myself going into this that I just wanted to do my best, and I actually think that Matt Emmons and Matthew Addy would be faster than me here, but I think that I was probably more lucky or had some more patience or whatever. Yeah, and it ended out turning out quite well for me this time. I actually went around with 0x in the race, so no touching of anything around the track.
So with that in mind, I mean, absolutely superb drive from yourself, and to pick up 0 instants over the race distance as well, over 2 hours at Bathurst, that's an incredible achievement. I just want to pick apart a couple of the things you were talking about there. So, on that opening lap in particular, obviously you were starting right towards the back of the AM class. So, the incident that did occur going over the mountain, which led to the safety car, that was quite a distant incident, but you suddenly came up to it. Just take us through what sort of happened from your perspective on that opening lap and the decisions you made, because there was a mad scramble where a lot of drivers went into the pits.
Yeah, and there was all this safety car thing, and I don't really understand it, like the tactics behind it. So I just wanted, yeah, we were going over the mountain. I was second to last, and then I just have decided to take it easy during the start, and then just see what happens. And then I got around the accident, and then the safety car came out, and I just stayed behind with some distance to the car in front. And some went into the pit, and yeah, I don't know if that was the right decision or not, or if I should have gone with him or not. I just decided to stay out because that's something I know. And then actually this just stayed out, and did my first stint when we went green again. And then in the last part of the stint, I ended up behind, I think it was Gus Franken. And I pitted, I think 2 or 3 laps before the gas ran out, just to see if I could get out, be in front of him, because I think I was actually a bit faster than him, but it's very difficult to overtake here. And it worked out. I came out in front of him, and actually I went into a gap somehow, and then I just could race my own, on my own pace for the rest of the race, letting the faster guys through when I needed, and I could kind of decide the pace, I think. So that was actually the race, just keeping the car on track.
Well, indeed, and definitely showed time and time again, because every time we cut camera towards you, it just looks as though you're in a world of your own, and almost as if you were just driving on rails to bring the car home to its natural conclusion. Just on that, with the strategy, of course, making the jump on Gus Franken, bring yourself out in clear air to get ahead of him. Obviously, running behind him, I have to ask you, when you're in that position where after the opening incident and getting ahead of the majority of the Anfield, and then finding yourself getting closer and closer to Gus Franken, what was going through your mind at that point? Was there any sort of nerves thinking to yourself, not saying that Gus would take you out or anything like that, but were you thinking to yourself, I don't want to get near him, I don't want any contact on the car, I just want to bring the car home safe, I just want to keep it safe?
Yeah, actually, and I think one of the things that I have developed through this, like participating in this championship, is that just stay behind can be safer and faster than trying to get around and then end up in an accident for both of us. Um, so I think that I was a bit faster, but not enough to make the clear overtake. So I actually decided to stay behind for some laps. If he made a mistake, I would go for the gap ride, but otherwise I would just stay. And then, yeah, I went into the pit in front of him instead, making the kind of safer decision, I think. And that was, I think I've really developed through this season, actually. And one who have really helped me here is Jason Landry. So I will actually say huge thank you to Jason for the help doing these, especially in the last part of the season here.
Well, definitely. And I think Jason will appreciate your kind wishes towards him and the gratitude. And, well, talking about your season, I mean, firstly, I just want to ask, as the time was coming down and that final lap, just take us through the feelings going through your mind on that final lap, because surely it must have been the longest final lap of your sim racing career.
No, it's actually not that long. I think it was actually, I felt fine. I felt I have the gap that I needed and I could just, bring it home. It was not that difficult actually. I was a bit worried during the race how big the gap I had to Matt Emmons, because I had, of course, my teammates on the radio, and they said, "Ah, you have plenty of time, but you never know with the pit and the strategies and so on, and yeah, the tire change and all that thing." So, but I think that yeah, I was quite relaxed, and I did my best, and that was the goal for me doing this race, and I'm very, very happy, and I'm very happy with the both with the results and also with the championship in general. Just being part of this has been amazing.
Oh, indeed. It's been amazing to have you join us. And that comes on, I can see in the Twitch chat already, we've got multiple users who've been cheering you on from the start of the race through to the finish. We've got Retouch Academy, we've got Miss Kagi, and we've also got Alexander Batak there in the Twitch chat under Batak DK saying he is the champion, singing it along in the style of Queen.
Yeah,
But I do have to ask, looking back at your championship campaign, obviously you started off quite strong, albeit a little bit in the shadow of Matt Emmons, and then there seems to be this period in the middle of the championship, so talking from rounds 4 to 8, where you came on a bit stronger compared to the rest of your peers, and then there was this sort of dip, if you will, and in the final 2 rounds you've just found a way to come back. How's this championship felt to you? Because it has been a very long campaign and it's not been easy.
no, I think it has been very long, and I actually wrote to Matt Emmons that I was kind of exhausted because as a family father, you don't have that much time. So these races are the only races I've done since we started this. I think I've done 2 or 3 races, official races in iRacing since we started this. So I'm practicing, in the weekend on Monday, Tuesday, and then we race Wednesday. I think it's probably something about the track. There's some tracks that suit you better than others, and yeah, somehow I managed to get that Motegi thing under the yeah under the belt. But then I fucked up in the joining procedure. When you join a server in iRacing, you need to join with the right car, and I unfortunately chose the wrong car last week. Yeah, so I think it's up to which kind of track suits you. The Hungaroring, I never really got that track actually. Yeah, so I think it's about which track does suit you well, and these technical tracks somehow suits me very well.
Oh, indeed, and it definitely showed through. And as you came towards the very end of the championship, that revival form only in the end stunted by, as you say, joining the server with the wrong car and therefore not being able to get out on the feature race and putting you in that rather exposed position following Twin Ring Motegi going into tonight. One last question I do have just before we let you go. What has been your favourite moment or set of moments in this championship? What are going to be those moments that when you look back, you'll remember them?
I think that the run we had on the Monza, where it was actually a real team effort. And one thing, as I said, I'm only doing these races at the moment. I miss the team aspect of the endurance racing that we normally do. And I really think that Alexander and I, yeah, made some good decisions during the Monza, at least for me. During the Monza race. So that's one thing that I will actually remember. And then just the learning process, actually, I've really encouraged everyone who have not participated in a private league to join, and especially this one. I really think it's a fantastic job that Matt and all the yes the stewards and the admins and what you do also, Paul. Thank you for that. I really appreciate also to watch back the replays.
Oh, well, that's no problem at all. And we're very, very happy that you've enjoyed it so much as you have. And well, appreciate with regards to, as you say, there have been a team effort in a different type compared to rather than team endurance. It's been a case that the team have all been out on circuit and working together. And just before we do let you go, just to give you an opportunity, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to with regards to within the team or personal family and friends?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the organizer. I just said the organizers of the championship. I really think that they deserve some credit. It's a lot of time spent on this thing. And then of course to my teammates, we have to done the training together, and then of course Jason Landry, who have helped me like also develop through the championship, and Matt Evans especially for the time that he's spending on this thing. I have a huge respect for all the drivers in all classes actually. But you get to know each other in the AM class, and I think that's very strong. And I'm looking forward to come back next season, hopefully with a bit of a break now.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant to hear, Stefan, and we look forward to having you back. But until then, congratulations on your win once again at Bathurst, but more importantly, congratulations on being our AM champion for Season 2 in the Apex Racing Academy lobby.
Thank you, Paul, so much.
No problem. All the best, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
There we heard from Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, very, very happy with not just the race win, but also that championship win. And in the end, well, as he said it himself, he came to realise over the course of the season, it wasn't just about being fast, but it was a season where he learned the tactics such as staying behind sometimes is better than trying to overtake. And he was saying about that with Gus Franken tonight. Indeed, I think for Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, when we look back at his championship campaign, it is a campaign built on learning. He started off strong, albeit Matterman seemed to shine a little bit more compared to Stefan, but as time went on, he started to rise up. He hit a bit of a slump in the mid-season, or just after the midpoint of the season, as we're talking about there, and of course he had that silly moment at Twin Ring Motegi where he wasn't able to start the feature race, having selected the wrong car, which put him in an exposed position going into the season finale. But when all was said and done, he is our deserved AM Championship winner, and you can understand why, because in the end he took it the distance and he made it his. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to be bringing in what is our winner for, the Pro-Am Class Day, and that is going to be Callum Reid-Garton. Let's bring him on into the interview room.
Hi.
Hello, Callum, can you hear me?
I can, mate. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Callum, congratulations on the win in the feature race at Bathurst. What a drive from yourself. I mean, did you expect to be right up there in the closing stages? It was very uncertain where you were going to be when all was said and done.
Mate, I don't even know. I don't even know where I finished the race, to be honest with you, but yeah.
Well, it was a very solid drive from yourself, but at the same time, it seemed to be a drive that was a little bit compromised at the start, and you seem to be right in the thick of that incident that occurred on the opening lap. Just take us through from your perspective, what happened on that opening lap?
Well, yeah, I got caught up in the over Skyline. It was just a big wreck fest. Got involved, and I'll just try to get back onto the track as soon as possible, so I could try and capitalise before the safety car happened, because it was a definite safety car, and it did. And then the pit lane was open, and then it wasn't open, so I didn't pit. And yeah, it was just a bit of a mess, to be honest. But came out, and then I was behind traffic for a while, and we were going so slow at one stage that I actually spun at the dipper because we was going that slow. We was single filing the whole way around. It was crazy. But yeah, and then I just saved fuel. Got to the end, looked after my tyres, and got a win out of it. God knows how, but yeah, brilliant.
Well, indeed, and towards the end of the race, obviously over the course of the race, putting in some absolutely phenomenal laps, and I think you may have even snuck the fastest lap over the course of the race, although we need to get that confirmed. But just in terms... Sorry, go on.
You're having me on, Paul. I didn't do fastest lap.
Well, I might be able to check and find out whilst we're talking here. No, I think in the end, you almost had the fastest lap, a 202.7. When you're the fastest driver in the Pro-Am class, and Mark Fletcher took the fastest lap in the end with a 202.6, so you weren't far off of it. But I do have to ask, with regards to, as you were in that pursuit and going through your strategy, what was going through your mind when you came out and you saw Jean-Louis Deschamps was literally only 3 seconds up the road when you only had, I think it was 20 minutes remaining?
I was shocked, to be honest with you. I really was shocked. Like, it was really weird how it all played out in the end. Because I was, what, a pit stop down, and the mistake that happened at the dipper, I just thought, yeah, just scrap in the bin. But nah, somehow, I don't know what happened, to be honest with you, but I'll take it, mate. I'll take it.
Indeed, and we're talking about taking things. We now come on to talking about your championship win. Of course, you won come the end of round number 10 at Monza with 2 rounds to spare. But when you look back on this championship, what have been your highlights in the Pro-Am class?
I think developing as like as a driver, I suppose, as a racer. I've learned a lot from this league. Obviously, racing with like fairly quick guys that are in this league as well, like that's helped. So it's definitely improved me, I think, 100%. So I'm grateful for that, and obviously the people who run it, and obviously the guys who commentate on it, like yourself, do a fantastic job every week. It's been really fun. It's always engaging. So yeah, really, really, really good, pleasant experience.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant to hear, and we're very grateful to hear from that yourself. But at the end of the day, it takes a driver such as yourself to provide us with the fantastic race in action, well, at least for myself to be able to commentate on it. And looking back over the course of the season as well, not just about the sort of experiences and whatnot you've had, but obviously hit the ground running, very fast in class from day one, and it just seems as though that momentum has never gone away from yourself. Just what goes through in terms of week on week? You're turning up and you're just constantly putting in that pace. I mean, time and time again, we've seen the pace from yourself, which has, at some races, been at the front, but say a couple of attempts ahead of the rest of your peers. And then at other circuits, it's almost as if you're in a world of your own. How do you maintain that level week on week?
Practice. I pretty much live on iRacing, so you put the practice in, you get the results out of it. I suppose it's one big learning curve, and so yeah, I'd probably say just practice, mate. Literally, you can only get better from practice. So.
Oh, indeed. Wise words are said by yourself. And just before we do let you go, is there anybody you would like to thank or give a shout out to?
Yeah. So first of all, you, Paul, done a fantastic job on commentating, mate. Every race been brilliant. NXTGEN for setting up the league. It's always been, run professionally and to a certain level, which is great to see. It's always nice and fair for everybody as well. Obviously, everyone who else who's joined the league and races and fills up the grid for us every week and attends, and also my new team, Altitude Esports. Those guys been really, really good to me since I've joined. Have really helped me out. Obviously they're just a great bunch of guys. Thank you to our sponsors as well. Ace Tech Sim Sport, Freem, Sim Stickers. But yeah, it's been really, really great. Oh yeah, sorry. One more shout out. Mark Fletcher helped me with the setup around in a fixed race. So big shout out to Mark Fletcher. But yeah, that's it. Thanks, Paul.
Oh, that's no problem at all. And indeed, I think all the individuals and groups that you mentioned will be grateful for those shout outs and be very happy to be supporting you as you go through your sim racing career. But with that, Callum Regarton, I do have to once again say congratulations on your win at Bathurst today in the Super Endurance round. And more importantly, congratulations on being crowned our Pro-Am champion for Season 2 of the GT3 Championship.
Cheers, Paul. Thank you. Take care, guys.
You too. All the best. So hearing there from Callum Regarton, very pleased with that result, and really just saying in the end of the day that it's all down to practice, delivering week in, week out, and finding that pace and pushing it to the limit. Indeed, if Callum Regarton were to come back into a future season, you can imagine he'll be up there most likely in the pro class and battling with the big boys, if you will, or the top class of the series. But to be fair to Callum Reid, he deserves that championship win, and it's all through the effort he's been putting in time and time again. But now we come away from 2 championship winners and race winners to one of our race winners, and that is Mark Fletcher. Let's bring the pro winner in to the interview room and hear from him. Hello, Mark. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. How are we?
Mark, we're doing very well, but more importantly, how are you feeling after a brilliant drive from start to finish to take the win at Bathurst in the Pro Class?
Yeah, I love this place. We put a lot of effort in ahead of the sort of 12-hour, and yeah, luckily the series finishes here. So yeah, obviously we've been really busy doing other stuff as well, but yeah, it's just fallen tonight that we can all attend, which is great.
Now, just dissecting the race, because it was a brilliant piece of strategy all the way through, and at the start, to be fair, it's the case you started well towards the front, but how you start, you have to go on to finish the race. Just take us through the opening lap in particular, because it seemed as though you were running behind your teammate Tom Dadswell for quite a bit of time. Obviously, the safety car came out. Did that trigger a potential change in strategy, or were you both sort of, you know what, we're just going to go with the safety car and then try and run the race as we go?
Yeah, it obviously, as you well know, it's so important to get a clean start at Bathurst. Get through the first laps. There was a lot of people spinning. Obviously, I saw the absolute carnage behind. And then yeah, we just made the call to switch it up, and Tom said, "Right, go run away." And yeah, luckily that's what we managed to do.
Well, indeed, in terms of that switch up, of course, in the end, enabling you to have the clear track to run away. Obviously, in that situation, the drivers behind you, naturally expecting, say, Matt Caruana, Billy Fletcher, and also Hackenstein, at some point to find their way through it and potentially hunt you down. When you're trying to make that breakaway at a circuit like Bathurst, where you've got to constantly look in front of you and watching out for the walls, what goes through your mind in terms of trying to make that breakaway? Do you just forget in the end there's people behind you until they're right there in your face behind you, or are you constantly sort of checking those deltas as well?
The worst thing to do is check the delta, but yeah, you stare at it every single lap. But yeah, it's just a case of when you get. It was nice when you get to sort of when you break the toe first. When you get to that second, that's a nice feeling because you know down Conrod they're not gonna get back at you. And then yeah, once it got to about 3 or 4 seconds, it was just a case of managing the gap. It looked like the McLaren and the Lambo were better on their tires at the start of the stint. But the Audi was mega towards the end. So yeah, it was just managing the gap, being really respectful for traffic, because it's one place where if you're going to try and pass over the mountain, you have to pull the car out really early to make it super clear. So yeah, it's going to be definitely good fun this weekend. But yeah, nice to take the win this evening as well.
Oh, indeed. And talking a bit about the strategy, of course, you had a lot of room to play with the fact you had a 9.2 second advantage when you came into the pits before Hackenstein and Matt Caruana made their second stops. When that pit window had concluded, we saw that Hackenstein had come out 6 seconds behind you, so he gained 3 seconds in the pits. Were you at any point there thinking to yourself, now he's going to really close down that gap, or was it just, you know, get on with business as usual? If he catches me, I'll deal with it there and then?
Yeah, that last stint, that McLaren, whether they managed to go 2 laps longer than me, so I was really worried about, especially Matt, because Matt is phenomenally fast. He's shown that all year. But I worked out the gap was only going to be about 3 or 4 seconds to Matt. So it was get the first lap out of the stint done, and then yeah, just try and sit at the 2:04 flats. You know, those guys can run half a second a lap faster than me, but it would have been crazy of me to try and push the lap times and throw it away with 15 minutes to go. And yeah, like you've just said, catching's one thing here, passing is completely different. So yeah, manage it and just bring it home.
Oh, indeed. And then bringing it home as you went on to that final lap, I do have to ask, as the checkered flag was getting closer and closer, what was going through your mind in terms of a drive which really is the definition of your season and also has earned you, subject to official confirmation, P7 in the Pro Championship when the final scores are tallied?
Generally, don't bin it. Don't bin it now. of all the time, don't bin it. But yeah, it's just the thing with Bathurst, you can't let off. That's the problem, because once you let off, the walls get closer and closer. So yeah, it was just a case of just keeping the pace that we had all race and just continuing to push.
Oh, indeed. And well, with that, coming home and taking home the win, I have to ask you, what has been your highlight of this championship season?
To be fair, I really enjoyed the reverse grids. I had to took out the last couple of rounds for another series that started. But yeah, it's just the guys here are fantastic. I think the way that I know we don't like to talk about it, but all the protests are done. I think that's extremely fair. And yeah, it's just a nice group of guys. You can put from a team owner, you can put people into pro, you can put people into pro-am. You can really stack the field out with your own cars. So that's always nice.
Oh, indeed, and we're very grateful to hear that from yourself and how much you have been enjoying it. Indeed, it sounds as though the Altitude Esports team have been enjoying the racing week in, week out. And just before I do let you go, I have to ask, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to live on air?
Funny enough, the same as Callum. So yeah, our main sponsor, Race Tech Sim Sports, Freem UK, Sim Stickers, and then my sponsor, Sim Racing Studio. And yeah, thank you guys for broadcasting it every week. We really appreciate all the stuff that gets posted about us.
Oh, that's no problem at all. And I think all the different companies you've mentioned, then your sponsors, we're very grateful to hear the names mentioned live on broadcast. But with that, Mark, congratulations once again on a solid drive all the way from start to finish to bring home the win at Bathurst in the Pro class. And thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Cheers, Paul. Have a great evening.
You too. So hearing there from Mark Fletcher, our winner in the Pro class at Bathurst today, a fantastic drive from start to finish. As you heard there from him, just concentrating on delivering that race and keeping it out of the wall by keeping his foot down and not lifting off. And it does sound as though Mark enjoys Bathurst, and with the upcoming 12 hours of Bathurst on iRacing as well, the preparation he's been doing for that has prepared him well for this race. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you start, you've got to bring it home to the finish, and Mark Fletcher was the number one man today for bringing it home to the finish. But with that, we have one final interview to do, and that is Matt Caruana. We need to bring in to the interview room our Pro Championship winner for Season 2. Let's get him in here from the Apex Racing Academy lobby. Hello, Matt. Can you hear me?
Hi, Paul.
Matt, it's been a long time coming. How does it feel to be our championship winner in the Pro class for Season 2 of the GT3 Championship?
It feels great after, what was it, like 12 races and trying to hold on to the lead all that time to finally get all the weight off my shoulders and pull it through to get the win in the championship. So it feels really good.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic to hear. And well, what a crowning race in the end. A difficult race out there at Bathurst. And it did look as though for a long time it was going to be nip and tuck between yourself and Billy Fletcher, with Hackon also thrown into the mix. But just rolling it all back. Start of the race. Bit of a difficult start, obviously, with that major incident with Deegan Fairclough and I think Kenny Herriman's being ahead of both yourself and Billy Fletcher and Hackon going over the mountain. Just take us through where you were in all of that, because it seemed quite chaotic on the opening lap.
Well, I was obviously at the back at the start, and my aim was just to survive the first couple of laps. But then when I think it was Deegan that had that spin, I didn't really know where to go, so I just followed Billy and hoped for the best. And thankfully, he chose the right way to go, so I got away with that one.
Oh, indeed. And then when we had the safety car, we did see the mass dive into the pits from a large number of drivers, particularly in the Prime class, where the Prime class just seemed to want to disappear off to the back of the field. But we saw yourself stay out there with the rest of the pros. What was the idea behind that? Did you just want to stick to your standard strategy and not take the risk?
Yeah, I didn't really see a point in pitting, to be honest, because I would have only been able to add like 10 liters, and the tires were only a couple of laps old. So if I can just stay out, then I'm not using the tires and I'm saving loads of fuel. So in the long run, it will be helpful.
Oh, indeed. And then when we got racing once again, there was brilliant back and forth between yourself, Fletcher, and also Gristad, all the way through the opening stint and even going into the second stint. Just take us through that, because from your perspective, you're championship leader, and you know you can't afford to be knocked off circuit when your championship rival is right next to you. What goes through your mind in terms of how do you control yourself and make sure it's not going to end up in the wall?
Well, I guess you've just got to relax and not think about who's next to you on the track and what's happening anywhere else, but just focus on yourself and focus on keeping it out of the wall, and obviously keep an eye on where the people in front and behind of you are, and obviously just keep the laps consistent.
Oh, indeed, and consistency has been key throughout the season. It's been one of the things that you've embodied most. And I do have to ask, when we went on to stint number 2 and we saw Billy Fletcher unfortunately have that huge moment going into the Watt Quarry corner, what went through your mind then in terms of the complexion of the race going forward? Because obviously, main championship rival out of the race, he retired. Did that change your perspective on the rest of the race going forward?
Yeah, of course. I after that point, I was just in the mindset of don't crash and just bring it home, and then I'll be okay. But it was good to race Billy through the first stint, but in the second stint, it was just about keeping it on the road and staying safe.
Indeed, and then come the checker flag when it was there making your way through the final corner, of course, finishing P3. It's not where you want to necessarily finish, you want to win, as we all do, but just take us through, what was it like, what was those feelings as you crossed that finish line, knowing that you'd secured the championship?
It's great to finally cross the line after all the races and pick up a championship win. Obviously last season losing out to Billy by not that many points, so it's great to finally win the championship.
Or indeed a fantastic rivalry between the two of you that's gone from season 1 to season 2, and you've finally been able to get one up on your rival. And just looking back at the championship, what have been your highlights or single highlight that stands out most when you look back on season 2?
I think all the races where me, Billy, and everyone else who's been in battles with me, I've enjoyed all of them. So I've enjoyed all the races with everyone. It's been good racing throughout. So.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic to hear. And just before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to live on air or give a shout out to?
Well, I'd like to say thank you to the guys at NXTGEN for organising the league. It's been really good and I've enjoyed it a lot. And also to the guys at GTWR, because they helped me with some fuel calculations, because I did not have my fuel calculator, so that was quite helpful. So yeah, shout out to them as well.
Oh, well, that's absolutely fantastic to hear, and I'm sure they appreciate your gratitude and your shout-outs to them. But with that, Matt Caruana, we bring your interview to a close. I say thank you for joining me in the interview room, but more importantly, congratulations on 3rd place today, and most importantly, congratulations on securing the championship win in the Pro Class for Season 2 of the GT3 Championship by NXTGEN Racing.
Thank you, Paul.
All the best. So hearing there from Matt Caruana, very pleased. And I think it's just settling in right now. And as you're saying that, I think one of the key lines to take away from what Matt was saying, the weight is off his shoulders. Now, you don't normally hear somebody say that. That shows you how much it means to him. In terms of season 1, he took the fight to Billy Fletcher over the entirety of the season, over the 12 rounds. And in the end, they were separated by the smallest margin of points at the end of Spa-Francorchamps. And it was so close. And it practically went Matt's way until Fletcher was able to find a way to finish just behind him. And then, well, today, it looked as though it could have gone that way once again, but it would have been Fletcher finishing ahead of Caruana. But in the end, with Fletcher's retirement, and Caruana, as he was saying that, as soon as he saw Fletcher retired, he just wanted to bring the car home, and that tells you how much it meant to him. And he enjoyed the battling throughout the season, but to be able to take that championship and secure it, I think, is going to be a huge boost to him. And if he does come back for season 3 to defend his title, you can imagine that fever for defending it is only going to be ever higher. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is all we've got time for today in this extended show for our season finale. Thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about the NXTGEN Racing community, why not check us out, our official website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, our Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. Also, a huge thank you to our title partners and our sponsors for this lobby. That's Apex Racing Academy for Lobby 1, their website there, apexracingac.com. Very grateful to have them on board as always. And well, of course, next time we don't have another round to go to, but what I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, whilst the details are still being finalised, stay tuned for Season 3. It's on the horizon and it's coming to a virtual circuit near you, starting Wednesday the 6th of April 2022. You'll want to keep checking the NXTGEN Racing website and Facebook group for further details, particularly if you're looking to sign up. Alternatively, if you want to tune in, as always, we'll be bringing you all the racing live on Wednesday nights. But that is what is on the horizon. We'll be back for Season 3 of the GT3s and more details are coming. But until then, I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh. We have been NXTGEN Racing. This has been the GT3 Championship Season 2, and we now bring the curtain down on the Apex Racing Academy. Lobby 1 has concluded. It's all been wrapped up at Bathurst. And until next time, as always, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling. Thank you very much for being with us throughout the entire championship. We really do appreciate having so many of you tune in on a weekly basis. But most importantly, until Season 3, remember to stay on track. Good night.